Something strange is lurking beneath the sands of Giza, and scientists have no idea what it is. Archaeologists just found a hidden structure near the Great Pyramid using advanced ground scanning technology. What's inside? Nobody knows, but excavations are already underway. The Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the most famous monuments on Earth. But it doesn't stand alone. It's surrounded by an ancient necropolis, a massive royal graveyard filled with tombs and monuments. They belong to pharaohs, nobles, and other high-ranking officials. Most of these tombs are above the ground. They're called mastabas, rectangular, flat-roofed tombs built from limestone or mud brick, and they've been studied for decades. But from old movies, we know that these weren't simple graves. They have deep vertical shafts leading to underground burial chambers, where the past was sealed away for eternity. And recently, archaeologists found one curious empty space in the cemetery, a completely unexplored patch of ground. No mastabas, no visible ruins, nada. For years they ignored it, but between 2021 and 2023, they decided to investigate. They didn't dig though. Instead, they used a technology that kind of acts like X-rays for the ground. These radars let scientists see the secrets hidden there. And there was something hidden beneath the sand, something deliberately buried and forgotten. A two-part underground structure. One part was shallow and L-shaped. It's about 33 feet long and buried just 6.5 feet deep. But below that, a deeper, more mysterious anomaly. A structure completely different from anything else in the area. They called it a highly resistive anomaly, which means it's dense and solid, likely made of stone, sand, or even metal. And still, no one has a clue what's inside it. Now, it's clear that humans made the L shape. It wasn't formed by nature. And the shallower structure might have been an entrance to whatever is hidden below. But they only have some theories about what might be hidden there. It's also filled with sand and gravel. It was probably deliberately backfilled after its construction, perhaps to preserve this. Why? Well, we don't know yet. The archaeological team will need to excavate to understand what exactly this thing was and why it was built. The first guess is a lost burial chamber. Many tombs in Giza have underground burial sites, but most have clear surface markers. This one, for some reason, has nothing. But it could be one of them. The second guess is an ancient offering chapel. Egyptologists know that some chapels were built in this shape, but usually they were above ground, not buried like this. And finally, it might be something we've never seen before. If this turns out to be a new type of structure, it could rewrite what we know about the burials of pharaohs. The only way to know for sure is to dig it up. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Excavations are already underway. Archaeologists are racing against time to uncover the truth. But there's a real danger there too. Giza's fragile ancient structures need to be handled carefully. Otherwise, they could be damaged beyond repair. So all we can do is wait for the truth. Now, these tombs always held fascinating mysteries. Unfortunately, we'll never learn tons of these mysteries because of some relentless tomb robbers. Egyptian tombs were built to guard the bodies for eternity. But that absolutely didn't stop people from breaking in and stealing everything valuable inside. They've been bothering these ancient sites for thousands of years, starting way back in Pharaoh's times. Many of the most famous tombs, including those in Giza, Saqqara, and the Valley of the Kings, were looted. It was a common practice in ancient Egypt. And they were serious about this whole thing. They dug secret tunnels to bypass traps and walls, bribed or threatened tomb workers to get inside knowledge, cracked open sarcophagi to grab gold, jewelry, and artifacts. And by the time modern archaeologists got to most of these tombs, they had already been picked clean. The reigning pharaohs got tired of this infuriating nonsense. The Valley of the Kings, the famous burial ground of Egyptian royalty, was supposed to be the ultimate safe zone. Tombs were built deep underground, hidden in the desert. Passages were sealed with giant stone blocks. False doors and traps were added to confuse thieves. Even curses were written on the walls, warnings of horrible endings for anyone who dared to disturb the tomb, which is exactly where we got all those horror stories about mummies from. Spoiler alert, none of it worked. Most tombs in the Valley of the Kings were fully robbed within 100 years of being sealed. Even King Tutankhamun's tomb, one of the most famous in history, was broken into twice in ancient times. Some of them decided to try and fight back. The New Kingdom rulers built hidden unmarked tombs in a way that should have prevented the looters from finding them, but didn't work. Some pharaohs, like Ramses II, were moved in secret to prevent their bodies from being stolen. Nope, didn't matter. The grave robbers always won. That's because tomb raiders weren't just random thieves. They were skilled, organized, and well-connected. They knew exactly where to look. Many were the ones who had built these sites in the first place, and they knew where the entrances were. If they couldn't smash through the doors, they'd dig through the walls, floors, and even ceilings to break inside. They also worked fast, often within a few years after the tombs were sealed, before anyone forgot where the valuable stuff was. The Khufu's pyramid, the one that's next to this newly discovered structure, was looted long before modern times. The one thing left inside when explorers got there? An empty granite box where the sarcophagus used to be. Unfortunately, it's not just about gold. History itself gets stolen during these raids. Ancient Egyptians wrote detailed records of what exactly and where they buried. So when archaeologists compare these lists to what's found, they can see what's missing, which is often everything valuable. Most artifacts don't end up in museums. They just disappear into private collections, where they can never be studied again. Which is, of course, completely unfair. In fact, a few countries have had enough and started passing laws to take historical artifacts back from private collectors. In Italy, if you own an ancient Roman artifact, you must prove you got it legally. China is actively hunting down stolen artifacts, and they must find ways to retrieve it back from the Western collectors. In Egypt, they passed new laws making it illegal for private citizens to own any ancient Egyptian artifacts at all. Other countries, like the US, the UK, Germany, or Switzerland, are completely fine with rich guys owning their history. The British Museum is built on looted things. European empires invaded half the planet and took whatever they wanted back home. Their museums are often full of such stolen artifacts, and unfortunately, they refuse to give most of them back. For example, the Rosetta Stone. It was taken from Egypt by Napoleon's army, then stolen again by the British after they beat the French. Egypt has been demanding to return for years, but they still can't get it back. Or the Parthenon marbles. These magnificent massive Greek structures were taken from the Parthenon in Athens by a British lord in the 19th century. Greece has been begging for them back ever since, but the UK doesn't feel like it. Not to mention tons of Mesoamerican artifacts, scattered in various museums across the world. European explorers raided Mayan and Aztec temples, took statues, jewelry, and sacred objects, and now Mexico is fighting to get them back. Well, wouldn't it be surprising even if this mysterious underground chamber has somehow been looted already? But if it's a newly found place, could it be one of the few that escaped the hands of grave robbers? Could there still be ancient artifacts, untouched for 4,500 years? We can only hope that those guys didn't get there first.
I bet you've never heard of the legendary oasis of Zerzura. This ancient city is said to be hidden somewhere deep in the Sahara Desert, and its discovery could mean unimaginable riches and untold secrets. According to an anonymous 15th century Arabic guide, the key to unlocking the city lies in the beak of a bird carved on the city gate. Zerzura might not be as popular as Machu Picchu or the pyramids, but that just makes it more mysterious. Legend has it that Zerzura is built around this big oasis somewhere in the desert west of the Nile. Apparently, it's made out of white stone and has all these luxurious houses and gold decorations. The story goes that a scribe wrote down the account of a traveler who stumbled upon Zerzura while looking for his lost camel. At one point in his journey, the man got caught up in a sandstorm, where he got separated from the rest of his group. The traveler kept wandering in the desert for days, And then, out of nowhere, two men showed up and guided him to the city of Zerzura. The traveler described this city as an oasis filled with little birds and made out of pure white stonework. The city is also said to be guarded by giants. In 1835, an English Egyptologist named John Gardner Wilkinson mentioned the city in one of his books. He spoke to a man from Egypt who found the city by accident after days of wandering through the desert. He mentioned some ruins, unusual stonework, and a large oasis surrounded by palm trees. The man even gave some instructions on how the city could be found, indicating that it might be in the western desert of Egypt. But here's the kicker. Even though a group of explorers went out to find Zerzura, they didn't succeed. At the same time, they did stumble upon a bunch of previously unknown oases. In the early 1900s, numerous expeditions were sent to find the city, including one with a fleet of Ford Model A trucks. But, alas, none were successful. Others say Zerzura did exist at one point, but not anymore. It's possible it was swallowed by the desert. It's believed that back in the day, the Sahara Desert was actually green. Scientists even found traces of ancient rivers that flowed through the area 100,000 years ago, creating green corridors across the desert. But Zerzura might have never been real to begin with. Maybe it only existed in the minds of people, a figment of their imagination as they were struggling in the African desert. For thousands of years, people have been obsessed with the hunt for another lost city, Atlantis. But if this place really existed, where on Earth, or under the sea, could it be? According to Plato, Atlantis was an actual place, and it was supposedly located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, near the Strait of Gibraltar. But how did this mythical city become synonymous with a perfect, paradise-like society? Well, you can thank Ignatius Donnelly for that. The American writer published a book in 1882 where he outlined 13 hypotheses about the existence of Atlantis. Donnelly truly believed that this lost city was where ancient humans lived in peace and joy for centuries. Donnelly even thought that Atlantis was the original source of many ancient civilizations around the world. And if we just followed Plato's clues, we could totally find Atlantis. Sounds like a treasure hunt, right? What inspired Donnelly to go on this quest in the first place, you might ask? Apparently, an amateur archaeologist discovered the city of Troy, using Homer's The Iliad as a guide. Well, if Troy was real, then why not Atlantis? Back in the day, some people believed that America was the legendary Atlantis. Columbus really stirred up some excitement when he brought back news about the New World to Europe. But the real hunt for Atlantis didn't really start until the 20th and 21st centuries. Some people tried to connect the dots between a volcanic eruption on the island of Santorini and the destruction of Minoan settlements. But in 2018, a team of investigators claimed they had nailed it, announcing they had discovered concrete proof that Atlantis had existed. What was their evidence, you ask? A series of mysterious circles in a national park in Spain. But the circles turned out to be nothing more than experimental ponds for studying zooplankton. Let's face it, there's no real evidence that Plato's lost city of Atlantis actually existed. But it doesn't make searching for it any less exciting, does it? The Fountain of Youth isn't a lost city per se, but it is another mythical location that many have claimed to have stumbled upon over the years. Long ago, people were obsessed with the idea of living forever, or at least extending their lives as much as possible. Each culture had its own wild story, like the Greeks talking about a magic fountain that let people live longer, or Alexander the Great finding a river of paradise that could heal the wounded. Japanese legends spoke of hot springs that could make you young again, while the Caribbean locals talked about the restorative powers of the water in one of their own mystical lands. Explorers searched far and wide for these magical waters, but nothing. Probably the most famous of all was the story of the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon, who thought he'd found it in Florida. Now, Ponce de Leon was quite a character. He sailed with Columbus and became an important figure in the area now known as the Dominican Republic. He found gold in Puerto Rico and even became the island's administrator. But when the ruler of Spain decided to replace him in his duties, he got upset and decided to explore Florida, looking for gold and the elusive Fountain of Youth. He explored the Bahamas, but sadly, he didn't find any gold or magic water. He did, however, make his way to Florida. He explored the coast and even discovered the Gulf Stream. Unfortunately, his last expedition didn't go well, and he was wounded. But the legend of him searching for the Fountain of Youth lived on. Even though historians don't think he was really looking for the Fountain of Youth, thousands of people visit the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park every year to try the sulfur-smelling water. It's the oldest attraction in Florida, which has been around since the 17th century. Some say the water has unusual properties, but I'll leave that up to you to decide after you visit this place. Norse mythology has its own mysterious land called Thule. It's said to be somewhere between Scandinavia and Iceland, where the sun barely shines and the cold bites hard. The folks there survive on a diet of millet, herbs, fruits, and roots, washed down with a grain and honey brew. As for its exact location, scholars can't seem to agree on it to this day. The legendary ancient Greek explorer Pytheas was said to be the first to stumble upon Thule during his quest for tin mines. He sailed his way up north, passing by Scotland, and after 6 long days of sailing, he reached Thule. The people there, according to Pytheas, were quite primitive, but that's no surprise since they were just simple farmers living off the land. They showed Pytheas where the sun set on the shortest day of the year. They also told him that in winter, the sun never rose at all, and in summer, there was no night. For many years, historians have been debating the true identity of this mythical land of Thule. Some say it's Iceland, while others claim it's Norway. A little bit of progress has been made recently with the help of a team of researchers. If their findings are correct, Thule might be the elusive island of Smola. That's farther south than any of the Norwegian islands that were on the list of contenders. It may be too soon to celebrate, but it does look like Thule has finally been found.
Deep inside an icy cave in Romania, scientists drilled out a 5,000-year-old layer of ice. Inside, a cold-loving bacterium was sleeping. It came back to life and shrugged off some of our strongest antibiotics. So if ice can preserve something like that, are we in danger as the planet warms and more old ice starts melting? Ice is like a library that files winters. Every new snowfall or drip of water that freezes adds a fresh layer. Scientists can slice through those layers to see what was blowing in the wind at the time. They find trapped dust, old pollen, or even stray microbes. The polar ice sheets are the biggest library of this kind on Earth, with books that stretch back over 800,000 years. But you do not have to travel to the Antarctic to find ancient ice. The planet has plenty of hidden underground freezers. One of the largest is the Scari Shoara ice cave in Romania. Tucked deep inside a limestone mountain, this cavern holds over 3.5 million cubic feet of solid ice. Getting down there is an adventure. Researchers descend a steep metal staircase about 160 feet into the cave. Standing on the frozen floor, they use hollow drills to carve out giant tubes of ice. Once, they pulled out a single core roughly 83 feet long, or about the height of an 8-story building. That ice dated back 13,000 years, long before human civilization. But the real surprise was the bacterium they found trapped inside. Bacteria are single tiny cells, basically microscopic bags of chemical reactions. They multiply by copying their DNA and splitting in half. This is a process called binary fission. If conditions are right, they can double their numbers in 20 minutes flat. Most bacteria that can infect us like it warm. Around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit is their comfort zone, but the one from the Romanian cave belongs to a different kind. The name is foreboding: Psychrobacter. But don't worry, that only means it prefers cold temperatures. It does best in cold, fridge-like temperatures. Our body would be like a sauna for it, but that doesn't mean it's harmless to us. Ice preserves things by hitting the absolute pause button. Deprived of liquid water, the chemical reactions that normally break a cell down come to a complete halt. As long as the deep freeze keeps the cell intact, the germ can survive on standby for millennia. But give it some warmth and fresh nutrients in the lab and it wakes right back up. Scientists tested this strain against 28 antibiotics. It resisted 10 of them. The other 18 still worked, at least to some degree. But 10 failures out of 28 are enough to make scientists pay attention. Then they looked at its DNA. Inside, they found over 100 genes linked to antibiotic resistance, along with almost 600 genes we don't fully understand yet. There's also an important detail. Because this bacterium isn't common, scientists had to compare its behavior with that of similar species. So the resistance is real, but we cannot directly translate it into "this is what would happen in a hospital." In lab experiments, the tiny germ showed it could actively interfere with other microbes. Researchers identified 11 specific genes in its DNA that are linked to producing compounds that may suppress or inhibit bacteria, fungi, and possibly even viruses. In simple terms, it's like a small soldier wearing armor. That's antibiotic resistance, but it also carries a few spray cans in its backpack that can damage other microbes. That's not unusual in nature. Microbes constantly compete, and many survive by making molecules that harm their rivals. That's actually how many of our antibiotics were discovered in the first place. So this strain carries two important traits. It can tolerate some antibiotics, and it may produce its own antimicrobial compounds. That combination doesn't make it some unstoppable organism that can eliminate the human race. But it does mean it carries biological tools that had evolved long before humans started making medicine. Here's what makes bacteria like this potentially problematic. Not because it can sprint into your bloodstream and establish a new colony there. It's not built for human body heat. The real headache comes from how bacteria behave around each other. They actively trade genetic upgrades, not like football players trading jerseys. More like coaches exchanging playbooks and learning new tactics. Bacteria pass around tiny DNA rings called plasmids, which contain bonus survival instructions. Other times, germs simply pick up loose genetic code from their surroundings, like finding a dropped wallet. The bottom line? We don't want these antibiotic genes to somehow end up inside a modern bacterium that thrives in humans. Creating a supergerm takes a wildly unlucky chain of events. The ancient germ has to meet a modern one to hand over its DNA. Then the new host has to actually assimilate it. Most of the time, that process fails, but the planet getting warmer could change how often these accidental meetups happen. More mixing means more chances for those upgrades. And we don't have to guess how thaw can cause trouble, because we've already seen a real-world example. In 2016, a heat wave hit the Yamal Peninsula in Siberia, with reports of temperatures around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which is basically beach weather for a place that's supposed to stay frozen. Soon after, an anthrax outbreak showed up in local reindeer, and there were human infections too. Anthrax is a disease caused by a bacterium called Bacillus anthracis. This bacterium has a survival trick. When conditions get tough, it can turn into a spore. It enters sleep mode and stays like that for decades. The heat helped thaw and disturbed ground that had kept those spores sealed off. And once grazing animals ran into them, the whole cycle started up again. But bacteria aren't the only microbes that cold can preserve. Viruses can make it through too. Scientists have actually pulled ancient giant viruses out of Siberian permafrost. They earned that name for a very literal reason. Normal viruses are so incredibly tiny that you need a highly advanced electron microscope just to see a blurry outline. Giant viruses are huge in comparison. They are physically larger than some bacteria. You could easily spot them using a basic high school microscope, and after 30,000 years inside a cube of ice, researchers successfully revived them. The viruses immediately invaded living cells and started making copies of themselves. To play it safe, the team used simple amoebas as test dummies instead of human cells. But if this can be done with a virus so old, could there be other viruses in permafrost? Maybe something that targets animals or even humans? The short answer is precisely that. Maybe. But hold on, there's no need for a bunker just yet. Viruses are biological specialists. They're extremely picky eaters. To infect a cell, a virus has to latch on to the outside like a key fitting into a lock. A virus designed to infect a woolly mammoth or a prehistoric amoeba probably has the wrong key for a human cell. Our biology is just different enough that the door stays locked. That said, we aren't totally in the clear. Scientists have found genetic traces of things we do know, like the 1918 Spanish flu and even smallpox, preserved in permafrost and frozen remains. But finding broken pieces of genetic code is very different from finding a fully functional virus that can boot up and start an infection. Most of the time, age and background radiation turn these things into harmless leftovers. The realistic threat is not an apocalyptic zombie plague. It's an ecosystem disruption. If massive amounts of ancient microbes flood the ocean, they might mess up the bottom of the food chain, knock out a specific plankton, and starving fish create a ripple effect that hits bigger animals. Melting ice is a slow-motion issue that plays out over centuries. Science and medicine are wide awake and watching. Humanity already has plenty of daily troubles, so prehistoric germs belong near the bottom of your worry list. They were digging a well when they hit something that made them stop mid-swing. Their shovels struck stone, and as they cleared the dirt away, the farmers saw blocks, lined up like bricks in a fortress wall. It happened in Texas in 1852. But to this day, there's no single explanation for something that looks like a secret buried city beneath quiet streets and front lawns. The diggers who found the well said that the structure stretched for miles. In some places, it dropped dozens of feet below the surface. The stones looked strangely orderly, almost like someone had stacked them, and in certain places, the shapes even formed arches. Other sections looked like windows or steps climbing upward. Before long, people started calling it the Great Wall of Texas. And the story spread quickly. Farmers, builders, and curious locals all grabbed shovels and started digging around, hoping to figure out what it really was. And that's when they noticed that the blocks seemed separated by seams that looked suspiciously like mortar. It was really hard to believe that nature could stack limestone into right angles and parallel lines like this. Then, things got even stranger. In 1886, a local newspaper wrote about a massive petrified skull found near the wall. They also mentioned underground chambers, lost rooms beneath Texas soil, and relics of something powerful and old. And then, almost as quickly as it appeared, the story vanished from print. There were no follow-up articles, no skull preserved in a museum, no official investigation that anyone could point to. It was as if the story had quietly slipped out of existence. People got even more intrigued and wanted to know if someone had suppressed all the info about the find on purpose. Someone suggested that some powerful institutions had quietly removed artifacts. Over time, theories piled up. Lost civilizations, ancient giants, even a North American counterpart to the Great Pyramid. But then, modern science stepped in with drilling rigs. Geologists drilled deep into the formation and pulled out samples of the rock. Then, they ran paleomagnetic tests. When rocks form, tiny magnetic minerals inside them line up with Earth's magnetic field at that moment, almost like microscopic compass needles frozen in place. If workers had cut these blocks somewhere else, maybe dug them out of a quarry, and then transported and assembled them into a wall, the magnetic patterns inside the rocks would have pointed in different directions. Each block would carry the signature of the place where it originally formed, but every sample had the same magnetic orientation, which means the stone formed exactly where it sits today. Researchers figured out the wall was made of rare limestone. This material can fracture in surprisingly straight lines as it hardens underground. Over long periods, erosion opens up those fractures, and they can look exactly like human-made walls. It's like mud. When it dries, it splits into neat geometric patterns. Now imagine the same process happening underground, slowly over millions of years on a much larger scale. Today, the scientists are sure that the rock wall formation developed naturally. It only seems constructed by humans. Recently, a family whose ancestors were early rock wall settlers donated a piece of land to the city that has the original site where the wall was excavated. And because the interest in the place lives on, the city authorities plan to make the original wall accessible to the public. The rock wall isn't alone. In 1968, 3 divers spotted large rectangular limestone blocks near North Bimini in the Bahamas. The blocks were in a straight line stretching about a half a mile. Divers called it the Bimini Road. It consists of massive angular blocks of limestone. Some of those blocks are up to 13 feet long. Many of the blocks look like they once had right-angled corners, as if someone cut them and placed them there with purpose. The 3 divers found this construction when the world buzzed with interest in Atlantis. So headlines immediately connected the dots and were seriously asking whether this could be the first physical trace of Plato's legendary civilization. We still don't have any archaeological evidence to confirm it actually existed, but the timing and the shape of the Bimini stones made many people believe that was it. But then, geologists explained that beach rock forms when sand, shell fragments, and other coastal sediments cement together in warm, shallow water. The Bimini blocks consist of small mud pellets, grains of sand, shell pieces, remains of tiny single-celled marine organisms, and fragments of algae. Over time, chemical reactions bound these materials into solid limestone sheets. Natural fractures split the sheets into rectangular blocks. As sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age, water gradually submerged the formation. Waves and currents eroded the sand beneath parts of it and made some blocks look slightly elevated or recessed. Then, researchers did radiocarbon dating on rock samples, shells embedded with them, and the carbonate cement holding everything together. That's how they found out that the stones were roughly 2,000 years old. It's way after Atlantis' supposed demise 12,000 years ago. So no, the Bimini Road doesn't lead to Atlantis. But it helped scientists better understand how coastlines evolve, how sediment hardens, and how rising seas reshape continents. There's another mysterious structure that might have to do with Atlantis. Meet the Eye of the Sahara, or more officially, the Richat structure in Mauritania. From space, it looks like a 25-mile-wide bullseye carved into the desert. Concentric rings ripple outward like someone dropped a cosmic pebble. People who saw it first thought it was a spot left by a meteor impact. And a new theory links it to Atlantis. They say it looks exactly how Plato described it, with a center island with 3 rings of water and 3 rings of land around it. The Eye of the Sahara sits totally dry right now, but imagine if you dropped it down to sea level. Ocean water would rush in and fill those dips, and boom, you get something that looks a whole lot like Plato's famous city. On top of that, the size seems pretty close. Plato said the main part of Atlantis measured about 11 miles across, and the Richat structure measures roughly 13 miles wide. But wait, Atlantis famously sank into the ocean, so for this to work, the eye had to sit right at sea level a long time ago. The fans of this idea claim that this whole chunk of Northwest Africa slowly pushed upward over the last 11,000 years. They say it sat right at the ocean's edge way back around 9,600 BCE, which is exactly when Plato's story takes place. To back this up, they point out tons of salt inside the rings in satellite pictures, saying this proves ocean water used to sit right there. They also see sand all around the eye that looks like a giant wave washed over it. A huge wave like that would totally wipe out any city sitting there, just like the wave that supposedly sank Atlantis. It all sounds pretty convincing, but actual scientists and historians totally disagree. Because when you look closely, the facts just fall apart. Yes, the eye has 3 clear ridges, but if you measure all 3, the whole thing stretches way bigger than 13 miles. On the flip side, if you only measure out to 13 miles, you have to leave out the 3rd ridge entirely. So it doesn't actually match Plato's description perfectly, since you simply can't have it both ways. Modern satellite images show that the eye formed from uplifted rock layers that were pushed upward by molten material beneath the surface. Wind and water erosion then peeled back those layers like an onion over at least 100 million years. The oldest rocks sit in the center. Younger layers ring outward. It's a geological dome, not a crater, not a city. Inside the structure, scientists found igneous rocks, hardened magma, and sedimentary layers twisted by immense pressure. Hot water chemically changed the rocks and left additional signatures. Ancient stone tools also scatter across the region, showing that early humans once passed through. This site is now among the most significant geological heritage locations on Earth. They finally did it. After 300 years of searching, archaeologists pinned down the location of the lost land of the white jaguar, the city of Maya hidden in the wild jungles of Mexico. It all kicked off back in the 1500s with the Lacandon Maya. These guys were some super tough survivors who just didn't quit. When their main capital, Lacamtun, fell to the Spanish in 1586, most people would have called it game over. But not the Lacandon. Nope, they packed up, headed deeper into the rainforest, and built their last stronghold, Sacbalan. It was a hidden fortress of stone temples, twisty jungle trails, and howler monkeys acting like noisy little guards. For over 100 years, the Lacandon managed to keep their traditions alive there, far from European control. Then, in 1695, history came crashing in. A Spanish friar named Diego de Ribas stumbled into Sacbalan. And yeah, that was basically the beginning of the end. Soon after, the Spanish took over. By 1721, the Maya had abandoned Sacbalan. The jungle didn't waste time. It swallowed the place whole, with roots tearing into walls and vines smothering plazas. The city didn't just disappear, it got eaten alive. For the next 300 years, Sacbalan turned into more of a myth than a memory. A name archaeologists and explorers would whisper, secretly hoping to find it one day. Plenty of expeditions tried to track it down, but the rainforest is sneaky. Every path looks identical, maps fall apart in the humidity, and even GPS can't cut through the thick green ceiling. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the haystack was alive, covered in thorns, and yeah, crawling with jaguars that would happily make you lunch. So how did the scientists crack the mystery? One word: a letter from the 17th century. The letter by Diego de Ribas described all the routes, rivers, and trails leading to Sacbalan. It showed in every detail the journey of the soldiers who walked 4 days to the Lacandon River after leaving Sacbalan. Then they sailed for 2 days and arrived at the church El Encuentro de Cristo, left their canoes, and continued on foot to Lake Petén Itzá in Guatemala. This was already detailed enough, but the scientists needed to pinpoint the exact location with geographic information systems. They took into account vegetation layers and how much each person was carrying to map an approximate range where Sacbalan should be. They fed this information to GIS and calculated where the city should be. And bingo, it worked. Archaeologists traveled through the jungle and found stone temples rising like broken teeth from the earth. There were also some tools and ceramics, and a Spanish church right in the middle of the ruins. The discovery isn't just about cool ruins, it rewrites history. For decades, people assumed the Lacandon simply scattered after Lacamtun fell, but Sacbalan proves they regrouped, fought, and preserved their culture for over a century more. It's like discovering the final chapter of a book we thought ended too soon. There's also irony here. The Spanish friar who revealed Sakbalan helped doom it. Yet his letter, centuries later, also helped save its memory. Today, the ruins sit inside a biosphere reserve, protected by the same jungle that once hid them. Tourists can't just waltz in. It's raw, tangled, alive. The city breathes again, but on its own terms. Scientists just uncovered another lost city, buried under the thick jungles of Mexico. It had been hiding there for 600 years. The place is called Gengola, and it's massive, about 360 hectares with more than 1,100 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, its own network of roads, and a super organized city plan. Because it was so deep in the jungle, you'd never realize how huge it really was unless you spent years hiking through it. But modern tech swooped in to save the day, using LiDAR, a kind of laser scanning tool. Researchers flew over the site, and in just 2 hours, they had a full 3D map of the entire city. Gengola was built sometime between 1350 and 1521, back in pre-Columbian times, and it used to be buzzing with life. It was a major hub for the Zapotec people, who had been around in the region since about 600 BCE. Families there lived in homes with big central patios surrounded by rooms, and as they got new members, they just add more rooms and stretch their houses out. They even used the mountains around them as natural walls and channeled mountain water for drainage. A lot of their buildings are still standing, which is wild considering how much time has passed. By the late 1400s, the Zapotec were real powerhouses along the Pacific coast. They even fought off the Aztecs, who were constantly trying to expand. At Gengola, they survived a brutal 7-month siege. But even though hiding in the mountains kept them safe, it wasn't perfect. They didn't have enough fresh water or farmland to feed everyone. Just 12 miles away, the smaller city of Tehuantepec had what they needed. So the Zapotec moved there right before the Spanish arrived in 1521. What the scientists have seen so far is just scratching the surface. That LiDAR scan revealed more than 1,000 buildings, and archaeologists are planning years of research to figure it all out. Instead of digging everything up and risking damage, they'll use advanced scanning tech to keep studying the city safely. Alright, now let's hop across the world to Egypt, where archaeologists stumbled on a whole lost city called Imet, tucked away in the eastern Nile Delta. The place was buried under layers of mud, water, and time, hiding in a swamp that's been shifting and changing for thousands of years. Scientists first noticed it from way up high in faint little clusters of mud brick foundations in satellite images. The shapes looked shaky and ghost-like, but too neat to be natural. So they followed the patterns down on the ground, started digging, and the city started coming back to life. They found multi-story tower houses, basically mini skyscrapers of the ancient world. They had multiple floors, thick foundations, and could handle some serious weight. That kind of vertical living is super rare in Egypt, especially outside the Nile Delta. It showed that people in Imet weren't just spreading across the land, but stacking upward, which means the city was packed, carefully planned, and way more urban than anyone thought for that time. And it wasn't just fancy housing either. Archaeologists also uncovered a grain processing center with paved work areas, animal pens, and organized spaces for food production. Clearly, this was a city with a real economy running behind it. Not far from there, they spotted a ceremonial road that once led to a temple for Wadjet, Imet's patron deity. But later on, other buildings got plunked down over the road, which shows that Wadjet's worship faded over time. Still, the ruins coughed up some amazing relics, a green faience little funerary figurine, and a stela showing Harpocrates perched on crocodiles and gripping snakes. He was the Greek spin on Horus, deity of silence, secrets, and the newborn sun. And there was even a bronze sistrum, an ancient Egyptian musical instrument decorated with twin heads of Hathor. Turns out, Imet was active from around the 4th century BCE onward, stretching from Egypt's late period into the Roman era. Its location along trade routes made it a magnet for merchants and pilgrims visiting Wajet's temple. So it wasn't just hanging on, it was thriving, connecting, trading, and adapting with the times. And this isn't just another dusty ruin. Imet is giving us a window into everyday life, religion, and urban planning in the Delta, which we've always known way less about compared to the big pyramids and tombs.
Let's do a thought experiment together, shall we? Now imagine you're climbing the Himalayas. However, you're lost. Where you are seems to be an isolated valley. You used all your food and water source and don't know which way to go. You're so out of energy that you don't even know if you'll be able to get back home. Suddenly, in the distance, you see a sage-looking man walking towards you. However, you can't help but to close your eyes as you are defeated by fatigue. You open your eyes to a totally new place. The sage is sitting right next to you. He says,
"Hello, traveler, and welcome to the land of immortals."
"That sounds like the beginning of an Indiana Jones movie, right? But what if I told you that such a place actually is said to exist, according to some legends, beliefs, and ancient texts?" Indian Tibetan texts mention a place called Gyanganj, also known as Shambhala or Shangri-La, depending on different cultures. This legendary city is the home of immortal beings and is a land of spiritual enlightenment. Take one of its names, Shambhala, for example. It literally means the source of happiness in the Sanskrit language. So, accordingly, you would expect this celestial kingdom to be surrounded by all things of great beauty and wonder, with gardens and other mighty and majestic structures. The ancient beliefs and myths state that when you enter Gyanganj, you will immediately be reminded of the structure of a lotus flower with 8 petals. The place is surrounded by mountains covered with snow. It has beautiful waterfalls, crowning into a pure and divine lake, and its water has extremely strong therapeutic powers. The whole place is illuminated by milky white light at all times, and this is neither due to the sun nor the moon. There are also phosphoric plants that can give desired light on voice commands. 100 types of other delightful flowers keep blooming all year round in its gardens, in addition to countless trees where delicious fruits grow. But one tree is known to be the most special one, and that is the tree of immortality, or the tree of life. Described as a shimmering crystal, it stands at the center of Gyanganj and unites the skies, the earth, and the underworld. The fruits of it resemble an abstract form of Sri Yantra, a mystical diagram used in Hinduism, which consists of 9 interlocking triangles. However, nobody is allowed to take these fruits out of Gyanganj itself. The only way to do it is if you get permission from the inhabitants of the city. This brings us to the question of who lives in this magical and mystical city. According to the legends, Gyanganj is inhabited by a great number of advanced masters, or in other words, sages, who subtly guide the destiny of the world through meditation. They are eternal beings who are not affected by any human desires or sorrows. Their duty is to protect the spiritual teachings of the world and work for the good of humanity, as well as all conscious beings. It's also believed that during a time of great chaos in the world, the 25th ruler of this Gyanganj will appear among them to lead the planet to a better future. These sages and eternal beings who live there are somehow also the protectors of Gyanganj. So, if you were thinking of just casually walking into this place with a map in your hands, sorry to inform you, but that's not happening. First of all, no one really knows where exactly Gyanganj is. Some people believe it's in a remote valley in the Himalayas. Some claim it's in a hidden cave. There are also people who think it's on a mountain range, and others suspect it's on a secluded plateau. So, the location of the city is a mystery and seems like it will stay that way, since it is also said that the immortal sages who live in Gyanganj camouflage the valley from humans by creating some kind of an energy field. So, Google Maps can't help you with it either. That's why some even suggest, including the Dalai Lama, that it exists in a different plane of reality altogether. In some of the ancient texts, there are actually a few instructions on how to access Gyeonggange. However, the directions are said to be incomprehensible, the way I get sometimes. But let's pretend for a second that you did crack the instructions, and the immortal beings living there were willing to grant you entrance. Unfortunately, you still might not be able to enter this cosmic city, and here's why. It is believed that only enlightened masters or sages who have a certain karmic connection with it will be able to reach there. So, what do the eternal beings of such a magical place do there? Remember, they have all the time in their hands. The ancient texts state that Gyeonggange has a center and 16 areas that are all meant for 16 different sciences to be studied. These include solar sciences, universal planetary sciences, sciences related to time, the science of air, the science related to the sun and the moon, the science related to space, the science related to gravitational forces, and so on. What they all have in common is that to be able to learn them, you first need to have a very high understanding of energy. The level of courses that are studied is extremely advanced, and these teachings are still unknown even in these modern times. Each scientific system has different departments, and all these departments have their respective teachers. Since time doesn't work as we understand there, and immortality is possible, most of these teachers are hundreds or even thousands of years old. They can stay in their spiritual bodies, which appear like a mass of bright light, while their physical bodies remain separate. What a school, huh? It almost makes Hogwarts seem boring. And does anybody actually graduate from there? Of course, all these stories and mysteries about Gyeonggange have attracted many people from all around the world. Countless attempts to find this land of immortality and spiritual awakening have been made by mountaineers and trekkers, including President Franklin Roosevelt himself. But as you might have guessed, they led to nothing. Still, there were a few people, like renowned spiritual leaders, sages, and adventure seekers who claimed they had visited it. One of them was Sri Gopinath Kaviraj, a celebrated scholar, who was the first person in modern times to have allegedly found the place. After his supposed visit to Gyeonggange, he wrote a book about it and made the place popular in modern culture. Upon reading his book, many other enthusiastic foreign scholars rushed into Tibet to learn more about it, as well as try to find it. Another person who claimed to have been there was a mountaineer who got lost in the Himalayas. According to his story, after getting lost, he was feeling hungry, so he accidentally consumed poison mushrooms. Feeling completely disoriented by them, he stumbled upon a mountain with a gap, which was covered by fog. Then he fell inside. After getting back up to his feet, he realized that he was surrounded by people dressed in strange clothes who tended to his wounds. After he was fully healed, they escorted him out of the city. Then there was the spiritual leader, Guru Saikaka, who revealed to the world about his not one, but many visits to Gyeonggange. As per his narration, he claimed to go there, seeking spiritual and immortal teachings. He stated that a sage escorted him into the city every time he visited the place. In his stories, he also pointed out that the kingdom exists in a higher dimension. One other so-called visitor to Gyeonggange was L.P. Farrell, an English officer, who claimed to have experienced the mystical place in 1942. Even if all these stories and descriptions about Gyeonggange are able to give us a vivid picture, it can still be hard for many to keep an open mind about its existence. Yet again, it's not hard to admit that even the idea of such a place, where immortality is possible and truly moral beings are working to protect humanity, is comforting, mind-blowing, and fascinating.
Clouds of blazing ash obscure the sun. The ground is shaking. People are running in different directions. A volcanic eruption has begun. And it started suddenly. A small, sunny coastal town is facing one of the most devastating natural disasters. The ash will settle. Lava will spill out of the volcano's mouth. And within a few hours, the ancient city of Pompeii will be in... Wait a minute. People get into cars and drive away. This is not Pompeii. This is a modern town. Huh? Is it possible for a city to get buried during an eruption today? Unfortunately, yes. Welcome to Montserrat. which is also called the Pompeii of the Caribbean. Montserrat is not a city. This is the British Overseas Territory in the Lesser Antilles, one of the Caribbean islands. It has the Soufriere Hills volcano that turned the lives of many residents of the capital, Plymouth, into a nightmare in 1995. But what kind of place is this, and why do people live here at all? The Montserrat area is not very big. It's about 6 times smaller than the Chicago area, and there aren't many people living here. Before 1995, the population of Montserrat was about 15,000 inhabitants. It's not a lot, but the island gathered several different cultures, as it was inhabited by the Irish, Africans, and indigenous people. Montserrat is one of the youngest volcanic islands of the Lesser Antilles. Before 1995, the Soufriere Hills volcano erupted here in the 17th century. Many years had passed since then, so people were not very worried about its new awakening. They rested, worked, had fun, went boating to other islands, and all this continued for about 300 years. Then, the serene paradise life ended. In 1995, seismic activity began. It continued for several months and led to an explosive eruption in 1996. Fortunately, no one got hurt, but the real disaster hit in June 1997. Something bad started happening at the top of the Soufriere Hills. At an altitude of about 3,000 feet, the volcano began spitting out ash clouds, rocks, and hot gas, releasing its boiling innards, which were rapidly falling down the steep slope. The locals were terrified. Some people had evacuated from the island by that time. They had to leave their homes and sail away, but some locals stayed and didn't survive. The pyroclastic flow destroyed many buildings, streets, and roads. In case you didn't know, the pyroclastic flow is a dense, thick mix of volcanic ash, lava, and hot gases that moves as an incandescent mass at high speed. It burns and destroys everything in its path. On that day, the pyroclastic flow was moving at 62 miles per hour, with its temperature reaching around 1470 degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine boiling water. Pretty hot, isn't it? And the temperature of that pyroclastic flow was almost 7 times higher. One part of the inhabitants of the island moved to its northern part, and the other migrated to the neighboring islands. Since then, Plymouth has become a ghost town. Thanks to the solidified magma, you can see buildings that seem to have particularly sunk through the ground or are stuck in textures. The streets are deserted, and the roads are covered with a thick layer of volcanic mass. After the eruption, only 1,000 people stayed on the island. There are about 4,500 people living there now, all of them in the northern, safe part. The southern side of the island is now called the exclusion zone. It's divided into 5 parts: A, B, C, F, and V, the most dangerous area. Why is it dangerous? Because the volcano is still active. Periodically, it spits out clouds of ash. It can erupt with devastating force at any moment, but that doesn't stop thrill seekers. Montserrat attracts many tourists who like to walk in the picturesque areas near the active volcano. People also love the ghost town. The roofs of houses, spires, and the remains of the clock tower stick out of the solidified lava. Broken windows with torn curtains and dilapidated former hotels attract many tourists. You can enjoy the beautiful tropical northern part of the island and see the apocalyptic picture in its southern part. Locals actively promote tourism and advertise their home as the Pompeii of the Caribbean. Would you like to visit this place? Living next to a volcano is quite risky, but how about living inside a volcano? Near 220 miles south of Tokyo, there's a beautiful island of Aogashima, most of which is occupied by an active volcano. But how can people live inside a volcano and not be afraid? The answer is simple. This place is too beautiful. Besides, the last major eruption occurred there at the end of the 18th century. People don't live right inside the crater, that would be too much. A small settlement is located inside the outer wall of the crater, far from the geothermal activity and quite far from the dangerous peak. But it's still a pretty extreme place to call home. The population of the island is about 170 people, and they're not going to leave. Here you can find only one shop, one post office, free camping, and a couple of guest houses and 3 bars. It sounds pretty cozy considering that all this is located in a green paradise. But in 1785, this paradise resembled Pompeii during the infamous catastrophe. According to stories and remaining records, the first tremors occurred on May 18 or so. It was a warning of the impending disaster. At that time, 327 residents lived in Aogashima. It's not known whether they attached importance to the small earthquake, but they continued to live peacefully for another couple of weeks. The volcano's activity increased. The disaster was inevitable, so evacuation from the island began on June 4. Unfortunately, it was too late. There were earthquakes, terrible roars, and streams of hot lava that covered trees, roads, and houses. Many didn't survive that day. And still, the descendants of those who escaped from the island that day now reside in Aogashima. Aren't they afraid of another eruption? They look at this situation differently. Nothing can stop nature, so there's no point in resisting. And if there's no eruption, then it's better to enjoy the picturesque views and the relaxed rhythm of the island. Few people live there, and there's almost no urban entertainment. But still, you can find what to do. In the afternoon, you can walk along the Green Mountain Range and enjoy the view of the Philippine Sea. You will feel one with nature, beautiful birds, the warm sun, and the physical exertion of the trip. It will all charge you with energy and inspiration. You can also go fishing, camping, or chat with the locals. At night, you can look at the stars. The night sky is perfect in Aogashima. Away from city lights, there's a low level of light pollution. A detailed star map can help you study celestial bodies without a telescope. Since the place is essentially an active volcano, you can find many geothermal springs there. One of the coolest and most popular places to visit is Aogashima Furiai. It's a sauna that uses volcanic energy to maintain high temperatures in the steam rooms. And outside the rooms, you can also find hot air vents for cooking. How about an omelet fried in volcanic heat? Sounds appealing. Of course, it's quite difficult to get to this place since Aogashima is a very remote island. You first need to get to the nearest larger island, Hachichojima. There are regular flights to it directly from Tokyo. You can also choose a more romantic trip and take an overnight ferry. It's only 2.5 hours by boat between Hachichojima and Aogashima. But if you've spent enough money, you can pay for a helicopter trip and spend a mere 20 minutes to get there. It wouldn't be surprising if you wanted to stay on the island forever after visiting it for the first time. A measured life in nature or the bustle of the concrete jungle? Which one would you choose? But don't forget that at any moment you can feel the ground tremble. But let's hope there won't be any eruptions soon.
So, you've probably heard of the mythical city of Atlantis. But did you know there's a real Atlantis of the sands? In 1992, a group of amateur researchers and archaeologists got curious about a lost city called Ubar, supposedly hidden in the deserts of Oman. According to legends and ancient texts, Ubar vanished because a deity got angry with the city's ruler. For centuries, no one could find it, and it became more myth than reality. That is, until a likely duo, a lawyer and a filmmaker, teamed up with NASA. They used a special radar system that could see through the thick desert sands and discovered ancient trade routes, compacted by the movement of thousands of camels. Ooh, imagine how that smelled. Anyway, this led them to the remains of Ubar, a bustling center for trading frankincense 5,000 years ago, a substance once as valuable as gold. This information was all they needed to get boots on the ground and start exploring the area. A group of over 40 volunteers removed 200 tons of sand from the site. They found something big, but it really didn't look like a city. Most Arabs in the past didn't live in traditional dwellings. They tended to live in open-sided tents that allowed the cooling breezes to pass through. But at the center of the tent city, there was a fortress that was the king's home. The fortress they found was ringed by 8 walls, each about 2 feet thick, 10 to 12 feet high, and about 60 feet long. At each corner stood a tower roughly 10 feet in diameter and 30 feet tall, exactly as it was described in that ancient religious text. Now, what the king who built it didn't know is that he built his impenetrable fortress on top of a highly corrosive limestone cavern. With time, the layer of ground above the fortress gave way to a sinkhole, and the whole thing swallowed the fortress all the way. Sinkholes happen when underground water starts to erode the bedrock, making the soil very unstable and fragile. Having a city on top of that certainly doesn't help. The whole thing just went kaboom one fine day, and we only found out about it recently. Yow! Meanwhile, Santorini is known for its stunning views and romantic getaways. But it's also home to one of the most fascinating archaeological sites in the world, the ancient city of Atrotiri. Dating back over 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, Atrotiri was a Bronze Age hub. That is, until it was wiped out by a volcanic eruption. Everything changed for Atrotiri in the 16th century BCE, when a series of earthquakes hit the city. The city lay buried under volcanic ash, much like Pompeii. The exact date of the eruption is still debated, although there are some clues found in unusual tree ring patterns from years like 1597 and 1560 BCE. Now, it seems as though the residents of the city quickly packed up and left, and good thing they did, because what followed was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in the last 4,000 years. The ash was so thick that the city remained hidden for thousands of years. You see, the Akrotiri civilization was known for its monumental architecture and fantastic art, being sometimes called the first civilization in Europe. It flourished during the Bronze Age, and they grew so much because they were an important part of the copper trade. The civilization saw over 500 years of wealth and prosperity. They expanded so much, their cities had extensive drainage systems, and their people produced high-quality pottery, according to what researchers found in later excavations. Fast forward to 1867, when locals started stumbling upon ancient artifacts of this civilization in a quarry. These findings first caught the attention of a French geologist who did the first digs. But it wasn't until modern excavations that the true scale of the lost city was revealed. As archaeologists dug deeper, they discovered a sophisticated settlement. Akrotiri was a key trading hub between Crete and Cyprus, with evidence of copper, pottery, and paved streets. It was a bustling, organized city, until that devastating volcano wiped it off the map. What's left today are stunning remnants of their culture, like beautifully preserved frescoes. These paintings, created with mineral pigments, show scenes of daily life, flotilla of boats, blooming flowers, and birds in flight. Across the Atlantic, Peru is world-famous for the majestic ruins of Machu Picchu. But there's a lesser-known, heartbreaking chapter in its history, the tragic destruction of the city of Jungay. In 1970, a seemingly small shift in a tectonic plate triggered a massive 7.9 magnitude earthquake, causing devastation on a scale few could have imagined. It was a peaceful Sunday afternoon when the regions of Uncas and La Libertada were rocked by the quake. The epicenter was about 22 miles off the coast, where the Nazca Plate dives, or subducts, under the South American Plate. It affected an area of roughly 83,000 square kilometers, larger than Belgium and the Netherlands combined. The tremors were so powerful, they were even felt in central and western Brazil, which are not exactly close by, just to give you an idea. Although many towns were affected, Jungay was affected the most. The beautiful Mount Osakaram, towering over the city, turned evil when the earthquake triggered an enormous avalanche. A mass of glacial ice and rock, about 3,000 feet wide and a mile long, came barreling down the mountain at over 100 miles per hour. It roared down the slopes, gathering mud, rocks, and debris as it raced toward the city, obliterating everything in its path. in just minutes. The avalanche traveled over 8 miles and buried Jungay under tons of snow and mud. Over 25,000 people lost their lives in the disaster, leaving the city almost completely covered. Peruvian officials have since declared the place a national mourning area, forbidding any excavations out of respect for those who perished. What's even more astonishing is that a few people managed to find refuge in a nearby resting place on a small hill. Some say that the town's fate had been foretold years before by a priest who warned about living in the shadow of such an unstable mountain. There's no way to confirm this, but it remains a part of local legend. Now, as strange as it may sound, this American city is sitting at the bottom of the man-made Lake Shasta, and how it got there is what matters most here. Once, the city of Gannett in California had 40 saloons, dozens of stores, a hotel, hospital, a school, and an opera house. Today, it rests as deep as 400 feet below the water surface. In the beginning, the city of Gannett was a mining community. The town started to spark attention in 1852 when it was announced that gold was found in the area. Gannett was also very close to the Southern Pacific Railroad, so it was a hotspot for businessmen, railroad workers, and the thousands of mining men that worked in the surrounding mines. At its peak, Gannett boasted a population of 10,000 people. Apparently, the city grew too big, too fast, and its economy couldn't handle it. In 1923, Gannett's largest mine closed permanently, and that was just the excuse the officials needed. Authorities wanted to build a dam in the nearby region, so in 1935, they started working on the Shasta Dam. When Shasta Lake began filling up with water in 1940, the old town's hotel and saloon still existed and were left standing. Today, all of its remaining structure sits in the deepest part of Shasta Lake. Now, here's the craziest part. During a recent California drought, some parts of the town that were taken by the lake's water started to reveal itself. After almost a century underwater, old bridges, train trestles, tunnels, and the town's foundations started to pop out of the lake's muddy depths. A gruesome discovery took place in Egypt some years ago. You want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 eerie pits. They didn't look too much like human hands at first, since they were abnormally large, but they were. Weirdly, there were only right hands. No left hands were in sight. It turned out that it points to the practice of an ancient dark ritual. Old Egyptian art and tales talked of a ceremony where warriors would present the right hand of their adversaries as proof of victory and ask for gold in return. Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so cutting off someone's hand meant you cut off their power eternally. Guaranteeing this type of defeat was interesting to the winning party. Here, the fight was between Egyptians versus Hyksos, who lived in what was once known as Canaan. Egypt has always been the center of some history-changing findings, and some time ago, this papyrus was found. If we stretched it open, it would be just a tad bigger than the height of a skyscraper. The world's tiniest skyscraper, which is located in Wichita Falls, Texas. When humans didn't write on their notes app, they wrote on this thing, made from the medulla of a papyrus plant. Around 2,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians wrote something reminiscent of a book where they describe most of their funerary traditions and their visions of the afterlife. It's considered one of the most important texts from ancient Egypt and is still sold in bookstores to this day. This ancient manuscript was unearthed from a chamber located just south of the Pyramid of Giza, located in Saqqara. Oh yes, Giza is the oldest pyramid in Egypt and not the Giza Pyramids like most people think. So recently, the site of Saqqara buzzed with excited archaeologists who probably found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies. They believe that this beautiful and well-preserved mummy was that of a wealthy man. He was discovered in a deep shaft, covered in layers of gold leaves. There are many symbols that show he was an important and wealthy man, like the band he wore on his head, the bracelet on his chest, and the fact that he was embalmed with a tunic, which was reserved for Egypt's finest. The most exciting part of the entire discovery was finding the resting place sealed with mortar. just as the ancient Egyptians had left it 4,300 years ago. Now this may sound weird, but back in 2008, archaeologists discovered a missing pyramid. Now it went missing because it deteriorated over the span of 4,000 years. Today, you can only see its base. It was a pretty important site back in ancient times. It is said that around the area of the pyramid, the ancients hosted a special type of ceremony where high priests would carry mummified remains of sacred bulls. Now here's a fun fact. Ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were earthly incarnations of the city deity of Memphis and was connected to rites of fertility. It wasn't just any Apis bull, though. They needed to be all black, with a single white mark between its horns and a bunch of very specific characteristics. They were selected by the local priests and honored until they passed away. After that, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. Meanwhile, this missing pyramid sort of disappeared around the 1800s. It was a German archaeologist who first found it in the village of Saqqara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first found it. But then, years after the official discovery, the desert sand came along and covered the whole thing. There were some excavations between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't too systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they dug an entire pyramid's base after removing the 25-foot mound of sand that was covering it. Oh, and it turns out American archaeologists are excavating a cemetery in Egypt that could contain over 1 million mummified bodies. So far, archaeologists have dug around 1,700 mummies. One of the main differences from other classic Egyptian mummies is that these people weren't kings and pharaohs. They were commoners that most likely lived about 1,500 years ago, when Egypt was controlled by the Roman and Byzantine empires. The name of the cemetery is cool, though, the Way of the Water Buffalo, just in case you want to check it out on your next trip. Other than bulls and buffaloes, ancient Egyptians also liked baboons. Are you seeing a pattern here? In the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, guess what? The Valley of Monkeys. An animal wouldn't have been mummified if it wasn't considered important. Certain animals were more important than others, since they were linked to specific deities. Jackals were connected to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were likened to the female deity Bastet. Baboons were a pretty big deal, since they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the deity of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's supreme deities. The archaeologists who studied these animals weren't too happy. They think these baboons were kept inside and were deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They had extreme vitamin D deficiencies and they were poorly fed. Maybe Thoth got angry with these baboon keepers. Just a guess. Since there's never a boring day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also found human mummies with golden tongues. Since Egyptians were all about the afterlife, they believed that golden tongues might help a person speak once they pass to the other side. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins with goods, such as necklaces, pottery, golden artifacts in the shape of lotus flowers and scarab beetles, and iPhones. Just kidding. A new temple was also unearthed recently in Egypt. Scientists believe it was dedicated to honor Zeus Cassios. That deity would be a cross between Zeus, the almighty Greek deity of the sky, and Mount Cassios. While digging around the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, archaeologists spotted 2 pink granite columns poking out of the ground, and bingo. They believe these columns represented the temple's front gate and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago. And speaking of deities, there weren't only super serious deities. Recently, scientists unearthed a golden ring in a city south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was a normal gold ring, but it had the depiction of the deity of fun, officially named Bes. This deity is often described in sacred texts as a happy chubby dwarf. Today, many tattoos we get are sorta deprived of any sense and are made of aesthetic purposes only. In ancient Egypt, though, women would get tattoos as a token of protection for childbirth. That's what scientists think, at least. Around the Nile region, scientists found some mummies that had well-preserved tattoos, which is a rarity since the skin deteriorates so easily. 2 of these women tattooed their lower backs, and the drawings were simple. They were mostly pictures, including that same chubby dwarf we just talked about, Bess. He also had a side hustle as the protector of women during childbirth. Now, would you believe me if I told you ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because that's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also squeezed an eccentric invention into that package – an automated deity some scientists called Hathor. This wooden statue had been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before someone noticed its secret. With the help of an X-ray machine, specialists discovered a mechanical operating system inside it. The pulley-like axis goes from the statue's shoulder to her left leg. When the system rotates, the statue raises and lowers her hand. Hey, pick me! Pick me! I got my hand up here.
This coffin seems to defy logic. No visible openings, no way in or out. And yet, inside lies Lady Shanet Ah, a mysterious woman from ancient Egypt, perfectly preserved even after 3,000 years. How did she get there? It was the third intermediate period in Egypt, a time between great dynasties. Pharaohs wore the blue crowns. Priests in Thebes were almost as powerful as kings. Markets were filled with the cries of merchants selling dates, papyrus, and precious perfumes. Lady Shanet Ah was in her late 30s or early 40s, old age by Egyptian standards of that time. Like other Egyptians at the time, she ate meals of bread, lentils, and fish. By that age, her teeth were already badly worn down, yellowish with enamel eroded, because food in ancient Egypt often had grains of sand in it. But she wasn't just a regular woman. When she passed away for unknown reasons, her burial was lavish. Locals wrapped her body in expensive linen and adorned with artificial eyes to replace her real ones. That would help her see in the afterlife. And that's exactly how we found her 3,000 years later, in a beautifully decorated sarcophagus. It was made of cartonnage, which is kind of like papier-mâché, made by layering linen and papyrus with adhesive. These coffins were wildly strong, lasting for thousands of years, all thanks to Egypt's super dry climate. But most importantly, Egyptians only used it for the elite. So she was someone very important to the locals, though we might never know why. But there was only one huge problem with her mummy. How did they even put her in the coffin? No matter how much researchers looked, there were simply no entry points. The only visible gap was a tiny slit near her feet. But that's not nearly large enough to place her entire body inside. This mystery puzzled them for decades, until they finally learned the truth only recently. They study those mummies at the Field Museum in Chicago using new technology, CT scans. It's basically like taking thousands of X-rays and piecing them together to create detailed 3D images. That's how we can learn more about the bodies without disturbing them. And it turns out the ancient Egyptians were unbelievably clever. They didn't construct the cartonnage around Shanet Ah's body, which would be a common and easy thing to do. Instead, embalmers created the coffin first. Then, they softened this coffin with moisture to make it flexible. After that, they carefully molded it around her wrapped body. They did cut a slit along the back of the coffin to do that, but then they laced it up like a corset, so it seemed like there were no openings. Finally, they secured a wooden panel at her feet to keep everything in place. That's where the tiny slit came from. Usually, the insides were removed and put in jars, symbolically guarded by the 4 sons of Horus. Egyptians believed that the deceased would need all that stuff once they got into the afterlife. They also thought it would help preserve the body for ages, which, as we can see, worked amazingly well. Thanks to their beliefs, we now have mummies as time capsules. Each son of Horus was supposed to protect each of the specific body parts. The human-headed Imseti for the liver, the baboon-headed Hapi for the lungs, the jackal-headed Dalmatef for the stomach, and the falcon-headed Kebis Senuv for the intestines. It's crazy how much effort the embalmers put into their job, especially in Lady Shanet Ah. They wanted to make sure her body remains untouched and the sarcophagus would be perfect for her. you can't help but wonder, who was she if she mattered so much? The ancient Egyptians literally viewed the afterlife as modern retirement planning. You're not just passing away, you gotta prepare yourself for it. Prepare the body, eyes to see, and so on. And the richer or more important you were, the better your afterlife would be. But Chanet-A wasn't the only fascinating mummy they studied. They also decided to scan Harwa, an Egyptian man who lived around the same time. Judging by the mummy, he also had a high social status. His mummy revealed no signs of hard labor, and his teeth were well kept, which means he enjoyed some high-quality food without tons of sand in it. Some fellas got lucky both in life and after it. But there were many mysterious mummies throughout history. One of them is Chin Tzu, also known as Lady Di. The story of her began in 1968. Some workers near Changsha, China, were digging an air raid shelter for a hospital. But suddenly, they accidentally uncovered an ancient burial site. They came down there and stumbled upon something incredible. 3 tombs belonging to a noblewoman, her husband, and a young man believed to be their son. She was a noblewoman from ancient China, and she had a fascinating backstory. She lived over 2,000 years ago during the Western Han Dynasty. She was married to Li Kang, a guy who served as chancellor to the Changsha Kingdom, a high-ranking official. At first, it looks like Lady Di lived a life of luxury and privilege. She had private musicians to play at her parties, and for her personal enjoyment. She probably played the guqin, an instrument that back in the day people associated with intellect and elegance. And she certainly ate like an empress. Fine meats, delicacies, and all things like that. Even her wardrobe was full of some exquisite silk, not even mentioning the tons of cosmetics. But all this wealth came at a cost. The more she aged, the worse her health became. She got a full pack: a heart condition, diabetes, high pressure, and liver issues. It also looks like her back was driving her crazy, probably making it hard for her to even move. Finally, as a cherry on top, she developed gallstones. All this packed together eventually led to a heart attack that took her life around the age of 50. There was one haunting detail. Scientists found over 130 melon seeds in her stomach and intestines. Most likely, she ate watermelon just hours before she passed away, which means it was probably during summer when the fruit was ripe. She enjoyed a sweet, simple treat before her life was cut short. The excavation began in 1972, and this wasn't easy at all. Over 1,500 local students had to help. And Lady Di was the most mysterious one. She was buried in 4 rectangular pine boxes, one inside the other like a Matryoshka doll, all wrapped in 20 layers of silk, and all that sealed with lots of charcoal and white clay. The coffins were painted beautifully as well, adorned with protective deities, mythical animals, and clouds which symbolized the heavens. There were drawings of divine creatures and Mount Kunlun. The myth said that on this mountain, people reach eternal happiness. All this told us a lot about the Han Dynasty, their beliefs about afterlife, art, daily lives, and their remarkable craftsmanship. And then researchers finally got to the body. It was astonishing. Soft skin, joints that could still bend, and in general, she was almost intact. She even kept her hair, eyelashes, fingerprints, and even traces of blood. It's like she literally passed away only a few weeks ago. Ancient people used a very clever technique to preserve her. It looks like embalmers put her into some weird, mysterious acidic liquid. This liquid prevented bacteria from growing. Unfortunately, it also gave rashes to all the scientists that touched Lady Di. And this rash lasted for 3 months. And you know what they buried together with her? Over 1,400 artifacts, mostly personal stuff like silk clothes, cosmetics, and musical instruments. Even food, grains, meats, wine, and pastries. There were also 162 carved wooden figurines of various servants and musicians. It's possible that they were either just there to service her even in the afterlife, or maybe based on her actual servants. For over 3,000 years, no one knew this place even existed. And then, out of nowhere, archaeologists digging near Alexandria uncovered something absolutely shocking: a forgotten Egyptian city. This place is buried under Greek ruins, hiding secrets that could rewrite the history of pharaohs and their armies. And one of the artifacts, which looks like a simple wine jug, changed everything. We thought that we already placed all the important parts on the map of ancient Egypt: pyramids, Thebes, Luxor, Alexandria. But nope, the map just got an update. The new city was a big deal, and it's about 3,400 years old. It's just been discovered at the site called Kom el Nugus. This place is located west of Alexandria and tucked between the Mediterranean and a saltwater lake called Lake Mariut. This discovery raised a few eyebrows. Scientists thought that this place used to be empty and that it was only settled by the Greeks in about 332 BCE. But it turns out that people lived in Kom el Nugus way before that. When archaeologists were digging through Greek ruins, they started noticing something unexpected: mud brick walls. Yep, you know, the pyramid type. That's the kind Egyptians built during the New Kingdom. These mud bricks were made from mud, clay, sand, and straw. These ingredients were mixed with water and dried in the sun, not baked. Egyptians used them for thousands of years to build houses, temples, palaces, and yes, the pyramids. Of course, other civilizations did use mud brick too, but Egyptian mud brick is kinda quirky. They used straw that grew in their regions, layout styles, and mortar. That's what helped the experts realize that Egyptians used to hang out in Kom el Nugus. That alone raised eyebrows, and then they found more. An entire street layout, buried structures, and even a temple built by Ramses the Great himself. His name speaks for itself. This guy was one of the most famous pharaohs in all of Egyptian history. He ruled ancient Egypt for 60 years, fought huge battles, and just loved building tons of stuff like that temple. People loved him so much that later pharaohs literally pretended to be him or wrote his name on their buildings. That's when archaeologists realized that they weren't looking at some dusty mud bricks of a tiny village. That's an entire buried city. They immediately started digging more. Turns out the whole place wasn't random. It was built with great care. The streets had drains to stop rainwater from damaging the soft mud-brick walls. There were also small tomb chapels with writings about soldiers. This suggests this place might have been the military base, and that changes a lot. In ancient Egypt, when the military showed up, there must have been a reason. So what was it? Protection? Conquest? Control of something important? In the case of this city, it was probably about wine, water, and trade on the edge of the desert. What's even crazier is that we still don't know just how big it was. The team has only uncovered part of it so far. There could be fortifications, warehouses, administrative buildings, or even more religious or royal structures waiting underground. We also don't know what this town was called in ancient times. That name is still buried. But it might be uncovered someday, maybe inside a wall, maybe on a scroll, maybe on another broken jug. One of those already turned out to be a mind-blower. A chunk of a ceramic jar, called an amphora, had a royal seal pressed into it, and that seal bore the name Meredaton. Princess Meredaton wasn't just anyone. She was the eldest daughter of Queen Nefertiti and the older sister of King Tutankhamun. Yes, that's right. Both Nefertiti and King Tut were involved here. All that was about a century before Ramses the Great built one of his temples here. Looks like the city was founded back in the days of another pharaoh, the pharaoh Akhenaten, husband of Queen Nefertiti, father of Princess Meredaton, and future king Tutankhamun. That guy, Akhenaten, was a bit of a wild card. He was the type who really gets weird about one of his interests. He tried to completely change Egypt's religion, forcing everyone to worship the sun disk called Aten instead of the usual deities. He basically told all Egypt that all their mythology was wrong, and from now on, there will be no more Osiris, no more Thoth or Set. Just raw sunlight only, people. That's known in history as the Amarna period. And he went all in, changed his name, built an entirely new capital city called Amarna in the middle of the desert, redesigned temples, rewrote hymns, and even banned traditional religious imagery. Even the art got wild at the time. People started getting elongated heads, belly rolls, and all that humanity and vulnerability carved into stone. It was deliberately weird. He wanted to show the family not as perfect gods, but as human vessels of divine light. Everyone had to awkwardly smile and play along because he was the pharaoh after all. The wackiest part is that after his rule, his son, Tutankhamun, reversed all the sun disk-related stuff. He literally changed his name from Tutankhaten, which means living image of the Aten, the sun disk, to Tutankhamun, which means living image of Amun, one of the great older deities. King Tut brought back the old deities, reopened the temples, and erased as much of Akhenaten's legacy as possible. Looks like his family didn't really like the sun cult after all. Meanwhile, this discovered wine jug shows that the city was probably active, thriving with life during Akhenaten's times. That's huge! Up until now, there was no clear evidence that his radical ideas and projects extended all the way to the north. The jug also shows that vineyards and wine production reached all the way to the north in ancient Egypt. Wine really was a huge deal, worthy of placing a military base here. Princess Meritaten most likely used this jug. Just like with her brother, she was born into the sun and named after it. Her name, also spelled Meritaten, meant beloved of the Aten. As the eldest daughter of Pharaoh and his queen, born right into the middle of radical religious changes, she was raised to perform the future queen's duties. From her earliest years, she walked in temples alongside her mother Nefertiti, shaking the sistrum in solemn rituals. She was there when Akhenaten established his capital city, Amarna. He clearly loved his family. Meritaten's face was etched into its stone walls more than anyone else. In every temple, in every sacred scene, her figure appears, revered. Things get foggy in history after her father passed away. The throne wobbled. King Tut was very young, only 9 years old when he had to take new duties. Meritaten seemed to have been a brief step between her father and her younger brother. She married someone called Smenkhkare. History isn't even sure who that mysterious man was. Could have been a puppet, a phantom king in a crumbling dynasty. May have even been her brother. Whatever the truth was, these two took power and ruled together for a while. Meritaten got the title of the Great Royal Wife, a title of immense power. But Smenkhkare was a very short-lived ruler. He passed away just in about a year. There are some speculations among historians that Meritaten was the actual ruler, the informal female pharaoh, because her brother was too young. Some theories say that she raised Tutankhamun and became a sort of queen regent, mentoring the child who would be used to restore the old order. But all this is unconfirmed. It's very hard for historians to find information about that time because the Amarna period was later condemned. The successors wanted to wipe away Akhenaten's heresy and everything attached to it. This included Meritaten. So even if she ruled, even if she mothered Tut, they tried to bury her in the sands of history. In any case, perhaps this new uncovered city will tell us more about the mysteries of the Amarna period, one of the most chaotic periods of ancient Egypt. Footsteps pounded behind him. Heart racing, he lunged toward the towering statue, fingers fumbling with the hidden crevice. No time. He shoved it inside just as shouts closed in. A deep breath, loud heartbeat. Then he ran, vanishing into the dark, leaving his secret buried in stone, waiting to be found. Throughout history, statues haven't just been silent guardians of the past. They've been hiding places for secrets, some deliberately sealed away, others stumbled upon by pure chance. See the most mysterious of them. In 2016, as Australian experts prepared a 645-year-old statue for auction, they uncovered a hidden secret, an ancient banknote tucked inside its hollowed head. Issued in 1371 under Emperor Zhu Yonzang, the note was worth 1,000 copper coins, or 28 grams of silver. More strikingly, it carried a grim warning. Despite passing through multiple owners, the hidden bill remained undiscovered for centuries. A rare relic from an era when paper money was still a novelty, the note was soon listed for auction, its journey through time continuing into the modern world. Statues became more than just symbols. They were guardians, keepers of history, and sometimes even life-saving tools. In 2017, restoration experts working on an 18th century statue in Spain made a remarkable discovery. Hidden within the statue's hollow interior were 2 letters written in 1777, providing insights into daily life, local customs, and the economy of the time. Similarly, in 2023, during renovations at the United States Military Academy in West Point, a box was discovered inside the marble base of a statue depicting the hero Tadeusz Kościuszko. Placed there nearly 200 years ago, this time capsule offers a tangible connection to the institution's storied past. The mystery surrounding statues and their potential to hide secrets extends to some of the world's most iconic monuments. Few places are as shrouded in mystery as the Great Sphinx of Giza. For centuries, archaeologists, historians, and explorers have speculated about what might lie hidden beneath its massive limestone figure. Some people thought the Sphinx concealed the legendary Hall of Records, a supposed library containing ancient knowledge, possibly even lost wisdom from Atlantis. In recent years, advancements in ground-penetrating radar technology have revealed voids beneath the Sphinx, leading many to believe that the statue may hide undiscovered chambers or passageways, some possibly linked to royal tombs or hidden structures. The potential of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx has captivated imaginations for generations. But what is perhaps even more intriguing is the recent work done by researchers from New York University, who studied the environmental forces that shaped the Sphinx. After recreating ancient wind patterns, the researchers concluded that the Sphinx may have originally been shaped by natural erosion before humans further refined its form. Such revelations open up new avenues for understanding the monument's purpose, as well as the cultural and spiritual significance it held back then. The ancient Egyptians revered Sobek, the crocodile-headed god of power and the Nile, and often mummified crocodiles to honor him. These creatures were placed in temples or tombs as offerings to the gods or to ensure their safe passage to the afterlife. Recently, a group of researchers dove into an interesting study about a crocodile that received the mummification treatment from Egyptian embalmers. They used a CT scanner to uncover all sorts of fascinating details about how this crocodile met its maker and what happened to its body afterward. For the ancient Egyptians, animals weren't just pets, they were major players in their rituals, acting as a bridge between humans and the deities. Hawks, for example, were associated with Horus, the sun deity, since their flight brought them closer to the sun. Cats were linked to Bastet, the fierce and protective mother deity. Crocodiles were among the favorite animals for mummification. These reptiles were seen as symbols of Sobek, the lord of the Nile, whose presence announced the annual flooding that brought much-needed water and fertile soil for farming. In the past, studying such artifacts could mean damaging the mummy. But thanks to modern imaging techniques, the researchers were able to examine the crocodile while keeping it intact. X-rays and CT scans revealed that the crocodile's digestive system was packed with small stones called gastroliths, which crocs often ingest to aid digestion and maintain buoyancy. Amid those stones, they even found a metal fish hook and a fish. This suggests that large mummified crocodiles were likely caught in the wild using hooks baited with fish. This almost aligns with what ancient Greek historians wrote about life in Egypt. Almost because the Greeks believed that Egyptians used pigs to lure the crocodiles. So, As you've noticed, researchers and archaeologists use cutting-edge technology and meticulous hands-on work to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations. The process begins with surveys using ground-penetrating radar and 3D scanning to detect hidden chambers, tunnels, or anomalies beneath the surface. Once a promising site is identified, careful excavation begins. Layers of soil and debris are removed slowly, ensuring that no detail is lost. The exhibition of Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam features a remarkable 15th century Tibetan gilt copper statue of Giza Samaja Akshobhaya. This figure, symbolizing the unity of opposing forces and a higher state of enlightenment, was previously unknown to the museum's collection. Recent examinations of this statue have revealed hidden relics and scrolls within its hollow structure, offering profound insights into the religious practices of the time. The exhibition showcases over 75 masterpieces from Asia, including the newly acquired Giza Samaja Akshobhaya statue, highlighting the intricate craftsmanship and spiritual significance embedded within such artifacts. In the heart of Verona, a secret lay hidden for decades within the bronze statue of Juliet. Sculpted in 1969, she became a symbol of love, touched by countless visitors seeking romance and luck. But beneath her worn surface, Juliet was silently guarding something extraordinary. Over time, tiny cracks formed from years of affectionate caresses. Through them, lovers slipped letters, whispered confessions, desperate pleas, and eternal promises. Some tossed in keys, sealing their love with padlocks and hiding the proof inside her hollow frame. In 2014, restoration experts made a stunning discovery. As they worked to mend the statue, hundreds of love notes and rusted keys spilled out, forgotten vows locked away in the heart of Juliet herself. Statues often act as symbols of power and might. However, in more recent times, statues have also been used to convey messages for future generations. The concept of the time capsule, an object or collection of items placed in a container, sealed, and then buried or hidden for later discovery, has a long history. And in modern times, statues have served as the perfect vessels for these capsules, allowing people to communicate with future generations in a very tangible way. In 2014, as old workers carefully removed the golden lion atop Boston's Old State House for restoration, they made a startling discovery. Something rattled inside its hollow head. A Boston Globe article from 1901 had once mentioned a hidden time capsule, but over the years it had faded into legend. Then, a sculptor's descendant unearthed a long-forgotten letter confirming the truth. Inside the lion's head lay newspapers, photographs, autographs, and letters from Boston's past. Messages sealed away for over a century. As the capsule was opened, it felt like history itself was holding its breath. The officials planned to continue the tradition, adding modern artifacts before sealing the lion's secret once more, until the 22nd century unveils it again. We don't know if they carry on with it, though. Advancements in imaging technology have allowed researchers to uncover hidden details within famous sculptures without damaging them. In 2014, restoration experts in Mexico made a shocking discovery while examining a 300-year-old wooden statue. Real human teeth were hidden beneath its serene face. The revelation came not by sight, but by technology. When preservationists took an X-ray of the statue, expecting to find structural details, they instead saw a perfect set of teeth embedded in the mouth, unlike other historic statues from the region, which sometimes contained real hair people donated to the statues. This discovery was completely unexpected.
We know that the ancient Egyptians were talented enough to build something as grand as the pyramids, but were they also smart enough to measure the speed of light? There's a theory circulating online that says exactly that. If you look at these two numbers, you'll see that they match completely. The first one is the speed of light in a vacuum measured in meters, and the second one is the latitude of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So, was it done on purpose, or is it just a coincidence? Well, happily we can tell you that it's actually just a coincidence. not another conspiracy thingy. The Great Pyramid is just one of the many places in the world that share the same latitude. And more importantly, even if the ancient Egyptians had somehow measured the speed of light and chosen to keep it a secret from the rest of the world, they wouldn't have used meters to put it down. Meters were only defined at the end of the 18th century. The builders of the pyramids used a different unit of measure called cubits. 1 cubit is equal to 1.5 feet. Cubit was based on the length of the arm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, and it became popular in the ancient world. So if they wanted to impress the rest of the world and set the pyramids at a point that matched the speed of light in cubits, they would have to build their iconic constructions somewhere in Europe. And then the Danish astronomer who first measured the speed of light in 1676 would have been really upset to know that someone had done it centuries before him. So although they were ahead of their time in many aspects, the ancient Egyptians never measured the speed of light or used longitude and latitude to map their locations. The base of the Great Pyramid of Giza might seem like a perfect square, but it's actually an 8-sided structure, not 4-sided. Each of its 4 sides has a subtle concave indentation that splits it evenly from base to tip. The official version is that a British pilot was the first to notice it in 1940 while flying over the pyramid. He took a photograph that showed shadows highlighting these indentations. Some people think these lines are only visible from above and can best be seen at dawn and dusk during the spring and autumn equinoxes. This has led to a freaky theory that the ancient Egyptians might have designed the pyramids to communicate with something looking at them from above. Now, the Great Pyramid is one of only 3 pyramids that used to have a swivel door. It weighed around 20 tons, but they could still easily open it from the inside. Its precise fit made it nearly invisible from the outside, with no visible latch or handle. There were only slight variations in the exterior stone that gave out an opening. The other 2 pyramids with similar doors belonged to Khufu's father and grandfather. The Great Pyramid also has a hidden void at least 100 feet long that was only found in 2017. We still don't know what lies within the space, what purpose it served, or if it is the only space of its kind. Researchers used the same tech to see through cathedral walls, Mayan pyramids, and even volcanoes. It depends on a natural shower of subatomic particles called muons. They pass more easily through empty space than through solid materials. So if they arrange multiple muon detectors around a structure, scientists can map out its solid and empty areas. A team of scientists placed muon detectors inside the Great Pyramid and allowed them to gather data for months. Scientists have analyzed samples of the mortar used to build the pyramids many times. Although we know its composition, modern technology still can't replicate it. The mortar is mostly made from processed gypsum, but it wasn't used like the cement we use for bricks today. Instead, they used it to support the joints between the massive stones as they were set in place. The estimated amount they needed to construct the Great Pyramid was around 500,000 tons of mortar. The gypsum mortar is stronger than the stones themselves and has held up for thousands of years. Now, all 4 sides of the Great Pyramid are aligned with the cardinal points – north, south, east, and west. According to geologist and engineer Glenn Dash, the alignment is accurate to within 4 minutes of arc, or 1/15th of a degree. The architects managed to achieve this without modern tools like drones, blueprints, or computers. Many researchers try to explain this construction miracle. Maybe they used the pole star or the sun's shadow. Dash recently proposed a new, simpler idea. The Egyptians might have used the autumnal equinox to align the pyramids. It happens twice a year when the Earth's equator passes through the center of the sun's disk, making day and night nearly equal in length. To test his theory, Dash conducted an experiment on the 22nd of September 2016, the first day of the fall equinox. He used a special rod the Egyptians had to cast a shadow and tracked its tip at regular intervals, forming a smooth curve. By connecting 2 points of the curve with a taut string, he created an almost perfect east-west line. Dash noted that on the equinox, the shadow's tip runs in a straight line, nearly perfectly east-west, and with a slight counterclockwise error. There's a similar error in the pyramids. Although his experiment was conducted in Connecticut, Dash believes that the same method would work in Egypt. All the ancient Egyptians needed was a clear, sunny day. They could determine the fall equinox by counting 91 days from the summer solstice. But they left us few clues, and no engineering documents or architectural plans have been found that explain their methods. So they might have mapped shadows, but it's not definite. Now, scientists have long wondered how heavy stone blocks were carried to the pyramid sites, and they might finally have an answer. A research team from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, has discovered that 31 pyramids are likely to have been built along a long-lost ancient branch of the River Nile. It's now hidden under desert and farmland. For many years, archaeologists have thought that ancient Egyptians must have used a nearby waterway to transport materials, equipment, people, and whatever else they needed to build the pyramids on the river. But up until now, they weren't certain of the location, shape, size, or proximity of this waterway to the site of the pyramids. The group of researchers used radar satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to map the river branch. They believe it was buried by a major drought and sandstorms thousands of years ago. The team managed to go below the sand surface and get images of some hidden features thanks to radar technology. They found hidden rivers and ancient structures running at the foothills of where most of the ancient Egyptian pyramids lie. The discovery of this extinct river branch helps explain the high pyramid density between Giza and Lisht, in what is now an inhospitable area of the Sahara Desert. Now, Egypt isn't the only country with the most pyramids in the world. The champion's title here goes to its southern neighbor, Sudan. It has between 200 and 255 pyramids, compared to Egypt's measly 138. They were built by members of the Kingdom of Kush, an ancient civilization that ruled the lands along the Nile River many years ago. They started erecting pyramids around 500 years after the Egyptians had stopped doing it. Their pyramids are much smaller than the Egyptian ones, but were built for the same purposes. Archaeologists are still working to find out how the pyramids in the Sudan were built, how long it took to complete them, and what happened to their society.
Not many civilizations are as mysterious as ancient Egypt, a powerful empire that lasted over 3,000 years. It gave us pyramids that still stand and myths that still inspire. It's one of the most explored places on Earth, yet somehow we still find exciting stuff. In Abydos, archaeologists just uncovered a 3,600-year-old royal tomb. It's huge! It has golden hieroglyphs of deities covering the entrance, but the pharaoh's name? It's not there. It's missing. Who was this ruler, and what new chapter could this open in Egypt's story? If there's one place in Egypt where the line between life and demise feels thinner, it's Abydos. To the ancient Egyptians, this was sacred ground. They believed it was the burial place of Osiris, the god who literally passed away, had his remains separated, and came back to life to rule the underworld. Because of that, Abydos became Egypt's spiritual gathering place. Pharaohs built amazing temples here, like the Temple of Seti, famous for its King's List, a wall that has the names of 76 pharaohs carved in it. Pilgrims came from across Egypt, leaving offerings and participating in Osiris festivals, where his demise and rebirth were ritually reenacted. It wasn't just symbolic worship, it was Egypt's version of Comic-Con. But instead of cosplaying superheroes, people reenacted gods coming back to life. Obviously, pharaohs competed to be buried as close to Osiris as possible. Abydos became part cemetery, part holy city, part afterlife insurance policy. Fast forward thousands of years, and we still uncover remarkable stuff around Abydos. That's the case with the recently discovered tomb. In early 2025, a joint team of researchers from the US and Egypt decided to dig beneath a rocky rise ominously called Anubis Mountain. You remember Anubis, the jackal-headed deity who guarded cemeteries. The uncovered royal burial was hidden 23 feet below the surface. Sadly, even though it eluded archaeologists for so long, robbers had already taken away with treasures ages ago. They could definitely tell this was a tomb of someone super important. Similar to how you can walk around a mansion with no furniture but still deduce that someone rich must have lived there. The chamber had mud brick vaults rising over 16 feet. That's taller than a female giraffe standing upright. For something built 36 centuries ago, it still felt enormous. However, when you remember that Egyptians were masters of architecture, nothing seems surprising. So no treasures, no golden mask, and sadly, no name. The cartouche that should have spelled the king's identity was unreadable. Egyptian tombs usually bragged about who was inside. In ancient Egypt, a cartouche was basically a big oval name tag for kings wrapped in hieroglyphs. Think of them as VIP passes that worked in both this life and the next. Without it, your soul couldn't check into the afterlife hotel. That's because to the Egyptians, your name, your Ren, wasn't just so your teacher could distinguish you from kids with the same haircut. It was a core part of who you were. As long as your Ren survived, so did you. To have your name forgotten was considered a fate worse than passing away. A soul cannot journey without a name. That's why you'd see cartouches all over the place, on temples, obelisks, jewelry, statues, and tomb walls. It wasn't there just for the marketing. It kept the pharaoh's presence front and center everywhere you looked. Imagine building a massive tomb only for 3,600 years later to walk in and go, who is this guy again? Not cool at all. That's why it's fair to imagine our nameless pharaoh haunting the robbers for all eternity. So yeah, cartouche was considered very significant. One of the most famous and mind-blowing examples comes from the tomb of Thutmose III. His burial chamber and sarcophagus were literally shaped like a cartouche. In other words, the entire room was a living architectural symbol of his name. Thankfully, in the recently discovered tomb, not everything was erased. Painted in golden hues at the entrance were two familiar guardians, deities Isis and Nephthys. Isis was the magician who stitched Osiris back together and breathed life into him. Nephthys, her sister, was the eternal mourner and protector of the mummy. Together, they promised that whoever rested here would not face the afterlife alone, and it's one additional proof of the importance of the mysterious pharaoh. So, who could this be? To answer that, we need to go down history lane. This tomb dates back to Egypt's messy chapter called the Second Intermediate Period. Instead of one ruler in charge, the country had many rival kingdoms, each with its own little power base, like a real-life Egyptian version of Game of Thrones. And right in the middle of that chaos was Abydos. For a while, it was home to its own line of kings, the so-called Abydos dynasty. Those weren't the pyramid builders everyone knows, and that's why they're so mysterious. They left behind almost nothing. No great monuments, no sprawling cities, just fragments of names on broken blocks. For centuries, many scholars even doubted they existed at all. That sorta changed in 2014, when archaeologists uncovered the tomb of Senebkay, one of those shadowy kings. Now, everything we know about Senebkay points to him having quite a story to tell. His bones revealed 18 deep wounds, the kind you get in battle. He had blows to his skull, back, and hands, and likely lost his life fighting, making him one of the few pharaohs we know who sadly fell in combat. His tomb was modest, with reused artifacts from earlier kings, but it delivered one priceless thing: proof. Until Senebkay, the Abydos dynasty was just a theory. With him, it became real. And that's why the new discovery could be a big deal. The newly uncovered royal tomb at Abydos shares the same layout and style as Senebkay's. It has limestone chambers, mud brick vaults, and protective deities, although it's much bigger. Which again raises the possibility that we're looking at an even earlier, more powerful ruler of Abydos. Whoever he was, he wanted to be remembered alongside the greats. Which is ironic, because it seems that history tried erasing him. Perhaps additional findings alongside his tomb could tell us more. Yes, there's more, and it's actually pretty cool. Not far from Abydos, in the village of Banawit, archaeologists uncovered a Roman-era pottery workshop. Yeah, you heard that right, a pottery factory close to a pharaoh's burial ground. The site had huge clay kilns, storage rooms, and even broken shards called ostraca. They were basically ancient sticky notes. Except instead of shopping lists, those had receipts scratched onto them in Greek and Demotic Egyptian. Little records of everyday transactions, the kind of thing you'd never expect to find near a lost dynasty king. Honestly, the Potters missed a chance. Forget boring receipts, they should have been selling Osiris's mugs and Anubis figurines to pilgrims and tourists. But that's not all. It seems that centuries later, during the medieval period, the same ground became a cemetery. Archaeologists found mud brick graves with skeletal remains. This could mean that Abydos kept its aura of significance for hundreds of years after the Age of Pharaohs. So why this hill again and again? Is this place really a getaway to the afterlife? It is, after all, the very place where Osiris is said to rest. That belief lingered like a shadow for thousands of years, strong enough to pull in pharaohs and later medieval families. Different rituals, same sacred ground. Although, to be fair, the Romans weren't here for Osiris. They came to make pots. The story of Abydos is not over. The excavations will continue, and who knows what else could be discovered in the future. Today, archaeologists are armed with tools that are basically X-ray glasses for the desert. Every scan could reveal a hidden chamber, or if we're lucky, finally give our nameless pharaoh his wren back to him. In fact, I became strangely invested in finding out who he was. So let's hope for some news soon. It's only a matter of time. Do you have your own theories? Let me know.
1,000 years ago, near modern-day St. Louis, Missouri, there was a vibrant, bustling city called Cahokia. It was a Native American city, the largest and most influential one in Mississippian culture. At its peak, around 1050 BCE, Cahokia was home to as many as 30,000 people, making it larger than Paris at the time. But what's interesting is that Cahokia didn't have any big marketplace. Usually trade was the backbone of any big city, yet this one stood out for archaeologists. That's because Cahokia wasn't about commerce. It was about culture, community, and parties. The people who lived there threw massive parties that would last for days. The city's grandest feature was its 50-acre plaza, surrounded by amazing earthen pyramids. This massive space could hold over 10,000 people. Imagine them all gathering there for festivities, dancing, drinking coffees and teas, feasting on deer, and betting on sports. The events were super lively. Cahokians would wear awesome costumes, style their hair in interesting ways, and decorate their bodies with tattoos. Athletes were playing a game called Chunky, where they hurled spears at a rolling stone disc, competing to get as close as possible. The roar of the crowd filled the air, and performers showed off their skills. These celebrations were so wild, they left traces in history. After the parties ended, Cahokians cleaned up by tossing leftovers into pits. Archaeologists have uncovered these waste pits, and they were filled with food remains and pottery. One pit alone contained the remains of 2,000 deer, and that's from a single event. They also found traces of yaupon holly, a caffeinated plant that was traded from hundreds of miles away. This just shows how much effort and thought Cahokians put in their celebrations. Would you like to live in a city like this? But aside from all the fun and games, Cahokia was also deeply complex and spiritual. The city was built on a landscape that mixed dry land with swampy patches. Many people believe that this symbolized the connection between the world of the living and the dead. The people of Cahokia saw their city as a bridge between these two realms. They built earthen mounds, both for ceremonies and rituals, and as construction support. These mounds rose from the swampy areas. Meanwhile, people settled in the drier spots. Elevated pathways connected these neighborhoods, creating a physical link between life and death. Isn't it sad that some ancient metropolises that rival modern cities in scale just disappeared? Cahokia's story came to a quiet end around 1350 CE, when the city was abandoned, all due to changes in environments and weather, floods, and other problems. But the influence of Cahokia was so big, it spread to distant places. Some of their traditions, like Chunky and Yauponti, have survived in native communities to this day. Today, Cahokia is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's not the only megacity we lost. About 5,000 years ago, people in the Indus Valley built some of the world's first cities. Mohenjo-Daro was an ancient city in what is now Pakistan. The city was built around 2500 BCE, and back then it was a thriving hub of the Indus civilization. Sure, it was much smaller than modern cities, but it was quite huge at the time, around 40,000 inhabitants. It looks like the locals were crazily strict and disciplined people. The city's planning and organization were incredible. It was laid out in a grid pattern. Streets and important buildings aligned along the north-south axis, probably to match the movement of the sun and moon. They also built one of the most advanced systems for water and waste management of their time. The city had about 700 wells. Nearly every house had its own. Most homes also had private bathrooms with drainages and even underground sewers. This shows how skilled these people were at staying clean. And with all this discipline, it looks like there were no kings, queens, or even a central government. They could still have some authority, like local elites or elected officials, just not a classic strict monarchy or religion. Instead, people there cared about simplicity and order. They basically managed themselves, having standardized ways of doing things, from the way tools and potteries were made to how they traded. Which is why, unlike many other cities, Mohenjo-Daro didn't have grand palaces, temples, or monuments. Instead, they had public areas known as citadels. People gathered at citadels for rituals, meetings, and storage of grain. And it seems like this way of life worked perfectly. Scientists found some seals and weights, which means the economy was well regulated. Archaeologists found some intricate artifacts like ivory, lapis lazuli, carnelian beads, and gold jewelry. Another famous find is the small bronze statue known as the Dancing Girl, which was discovered in 1926. Mohenjo-Daro wasn't poor at all. And they also pulled off some awesome buildings. Staying clean was clearly way more important to them than displays of wealth or power. So they created the Great Bath, one of the most famous structures in the city. It's a large, watertight pool built with baked bricks, perched on a mound of earth, being almost a religious place, the closest thing they had to a temple. Meanwhile, the city itself was built on a series of mounds. They grew taller over the centuries as people added new houses and structures. Why did the city fail? No one really knows. There's something mysterious about the sculptures archaeologists found. Many of them seemed intentionally broken. This means the city's later inhabitants, maybe invaders or something, destroyed them for some reason. Some scientists think that the Indus River may have shifted course, disrupting agriculture and trade. But there's no evidence of a flood or any big event like this. It just seems like, over time, the entire Indus civilization just gradually faded away. By 1900 BCE, the culture had shifted and didn't leave much behind. Let me tell you now about the ancient city of Kos, which is located where the modern town of Kos now stands in Greece. Imagine arriving by sea, and the first thing that hits you is the sheer grandeur of its agora, this massive public square built with stones in different colors, laid out on terraces that rise above you. It was one of the biggest in the ancient world, and it made a great impression on anyone approaching the city. This place has a rich history dating back to around 2300 to 2200 BCE. A long time ago, local folk gathered up from different parts of the island to form a new city in the northeast. People have lived there since the Bronze Age, and over time, it became a super important center of culture and trade. And no wonder, since it's right near a natural harbor. The harbor was sheltered by two breakwaters, and people built some of the most important religious sites there, including the sanctuaries of Aphrodite and Hercules. Kos wasn't just beautiful, though. It had some brilliant design. The whole city was laid out in a neat grid, with streets crossing each other at perfect right angles, literally looking almost like a modern city. Thanks to this, moving around was super easy, and the blocks, or insulae, were big enough to fit several large houses. Kos remained largely unchanged until the 6th century CE. Over time, it started gradually shrinking in size, confined within the walls of what is now the Chora neighborhood. Meanwhile, Palmyra was an ancient city built around a beautiful oasis sometime around the 3rd millennium BCE. Originally known as Tadmor, this city flourished as a major stop on the Silk Road, linking the Near East with Asia. It was a thriving center of trade and culture. They had a marketplace, assembly buildings, grand gates. In other words, this place was bustling with life. The city has been through many hands throughout its history, from the Byzantine to Arab caliphates, which is probably why it had some awesome architecture. An interesting blend of Greco-Roman, Persian, and Arabic vibes. The Temple of Bel, the Great Colonnade, and a Roman-style theater. But, like all the others, it decayed over time. Palmyra's importance faded, and by the early 1400s, it had been largely destroyed. But at least its ruins remained. Right now, they're a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Scientists have discovered a never-before-seen pyramid immersed in the sands of Judea. After a little digging, they discovered that it held treasures that had been untouched for over 2 millennia and historical secrets that we can only now access. At the Zohar Fortress site, 2,600 feet above the Dead Sea, archaeologists were searching for manuscripts that would provide new information about the history of the site. The excavation was originally part of a long-standing campaign launched by the authorities. Its goal was to protect the sites from looting and unauthorized excavations. What they didn't expect was to find a pyramid-shaped structure built on top of a hill, made of hand-cut stones, each weighing hundreds of pounds. At first, the experts thought it was just a tomb, but they soon noticed the shape of the original walls and understood that the mound was a construction. They immediately realized that someone had dug into the top of the structure, probably looters who had spotted something valuable there. Luckily, most of the structure was still buried in sand, so the most valuable finds were hidden from sight. In the first week of excavation, volunteers found fragments of papyrus, bronze vases, and even ancient furniture, which were exceptionally well preserved. The desert climate had been a great ally in preserving those artifacts over the millennia. With little humidity in the air, mold cannot form. So, organic materials such as wood and fibers are protected from cracking and deformation. Hypotheses suggested that the pyramid had been built during the First Temple period. However, new discoveries have shown that it's more recent, from the Hellenistic period. Considering this and the fact that the structure dates back 2,200 years, it's believed that it probably appeared shortly after the death of Alexander the Great, the famous ancient Greek king of Macedonia. At that time, his generals divided the former Seleucid Empire. Ptolemy took control of Egypt and the surrounding regions, including the Dead Sea area, while Seleucus took control of the north, which is now part of the Middle East. It's still not known for sure whether the pyramid was built under the rule of the Ptolemaics or the Seleucids. Both Ptolemaic coins and coins from the Seleucid kingdom have been found at the site. Even so, many scholars believe it was built when the region was under Ptolemaic control. Evidence also suggests that the building, despite its longevity, collapsed at some point. But that's not why it was abandoned by the ancient Egyptians, which begs the question of what purpose it was built for. Some believe it was used as a tomb due to its picturesque location on top of a hill. Others believed it may have served as a historical monument. However, one of the strongest theories is that the pyramid was a guard tower, protecting an important trade route along which salt and bitumen resources from the Dead Sea were transported to coastal ports. They also believe it may have been used by Ptolemaic officials to collect taxes from travelers. It would be something equivalent to our modern-day toll booths, or even port inspection agencies. Although the contents of the papyrus documents remain a mystery, it seems very likely they were written using the Greek alphabet, and some experts believe that they may have been tax documents, which would make perfect sense, given the theory that the pyramid was a guard tower. The team calls it a fascinating historical mystery that the dig is helping to unravel, but the find is just a grain of sand in an entire desert. The dig is part of a larger project that's been going on for a long time, and in the last 8 years alone, it has scanned 111 miles of desert cliffs and identified approximately 900 caves within that radius. Using rappelling equipment, advanced technology, and specialized documentation methods, archaeologists discovered thousands of rare items, such as hidden scrolls, woodworking tools, carpets, leather goods, and even treasures. For them, the Judean desert is an ancient vault just waiting to be opened to reveal its secrets. A few years before they found the mysterious pyramid, they discovered a cave that had served as a refuge for Jewish rebels almost 1900 years ago. The site was about 262 feet from the top of a cliff, and because of its difficult access, it hadn't been explored yet. Inside, they found previously unpublished fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls that contained religious passages written in Greek. 11 lines of text were reconstructed thanks to the good condition of the papyri. So, scientists were able to identify their etymological content. Probably the best thing, there was no problem with preservation. Thanks to the dry and hot conditions of the desert, the artifacts were in impeccable condition. And there were other historical treasures there. The teams found rare coins, a partially mummified skeleton over 6,000 years old, with skin, tendons, and even strands of hair. There was also a giant basket made of plant fibers, considered the oldest in the world, more than 10,000 years old. With a capacity of up to 26 gallons, it was made about 1,000 years before the invention of ceramics. Speaking of historical treasures, there's another one that has caught the attention of the scientific community. A small piece of fabric that is around 3,800 years old. But it's more than just simple fabric. Dyed with the rare scarlet paint mentioned many times in ancient religious texts, this find is the oldest known evidence of fabric painted with a dye made from insects known as scarlet worms. This is where the intense red hue comes from. It was a highly valued color, like royal blue and purple, because those insects lived in oak trees and could only be harvested for a short period during the year. So, those dyes were reserved for sacred fabrics, such as priests' clothes, marking status and religious importance. And although this discovery had great significance for archaeology, its size was actually tiny, measuring less than 1 inch. The fragment was discovered in 2016 during excavations in the so-called Cave of Skulls, but it's not known exactly how this fabric got there. According to experts, it's evidence that people knew how to dye wool fibers already 3,800 years ago or so. It also provides us with proof that the ancient textile industry already used animals at about the same time people began to create written sources. Fabrics painted using this type of dye were recorded in more recent periods. But what makes this piece really special is the fact that it is much older than any other. Another important discovery was made in 1980, when scientists found a seed that was over 1,000 years old, which turned into a mysterious tree named Sheba. They spent 14 years cultivating this plant, which is now about 10 feet tall. only to discover later that it could belong to an extinct lineage of trees that had grown in the region. The seed dates back to a period between 993 and 1202 CE, and they believe that Sheba may be a biblical tree commonly associated with healing. Although it's not been possible to identify the exact species, since the tree hasn't flowered, we know that it belongs to the genus Commiphora, which is related to famous African plants, such as the myrrh tree. But time has revealed something even more special. Its leaves and resins are rich in compounds that have medicinal, antioxidant, and even skin-soothing properties. This means that the tree may represent a forgotten lineage whose resin had medicinal value and was mentioned in ancient texts. This brings to light how ancient people dealt with botanical medicine.
Imagine working 7 days a week on a large-scale construction site. You, along with thousands of others, carry millions of stone blocks and put them on top of each other according to a complex system. You work without modern construction equipment. You have no air conditioning or constant access to water. It's so hot outside that you can fry eggs on the road. You've been building the pyramid for decades, and now, when it's finally done, you enjoy the result of the colossal work of thousands of people. You're looking at a giant cultural monument of global value that will freeze in time and amaze people for tens of thousands of years. A few thousand years have passed. People in the 21st century see the pyramids and are like, wow, I can't believe humans have built this. Yeah, the people who built the pyramids wouldn't have appreciated such a theory. But actually, there are reasons to believe that people built it using some fantastic technology. From the outside, it seems the Great Pyramids are just big triangles of stone. People just put some heavy blocks on top of each other, and that's it. In fact, the design seems too perfect to be true. The pyramid consists of more than 2 million blocks. They lay so close to each other and are so even that you couldn't squeeze even a thin sheet of paper between them. Scientists still can't figure out the exact technology for building the Egyptian pyramids. One of the biggest and most famous is the Great Pyramid of Giza. This huge construction, well known all over the world, has one big secret. There should be a capstone on top of the pyramid. It's a triangular-shaped stone block, a small pyramid on top of a huge one. It's also called a pyramidion. The builders of ancient Egypt made it out of granite and limestone and covered it with gold. No records or old drawings prove that there was a pyramidion at the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But there's another ancient Egyptian structure with such a triangle, the Red Pyramid. It was built before the Great One, and its capstone has survived to this day. Archaeologists have found and reconstructed it. But where could the capstone of the Great Pyramid be? It's a mystery that still has no answer. Some are sure that some thieves have stolen it from the top. Maybe they just climbed up and pushed the pyramidion down. It makes perfect sense. The capstone was probably the most valuable element of the pyramid. Many scientists and archaeologists still don't know its exact purpose. Some believe that this peak covered with gold glorified the pharaohs. The capstone reflected moonlight at night and illuminated the entire space around it. During the day, the capstone reflected sunlight with its shiny surface. You could have noticed it from afar. The top of the pyramid was a kind of guiding star for lost travelers. All other stone blocks of the pyramid consist of limestone. People polished them to make them look shiny. In the past, they were even glowing and reflected light. You could see glowing pyramids from space, although they looked like tiny lights. Over thousands of years, winds, sandstorms, and rains have changed the pyramid's appearance. If people had taken care of them all this time, they would have looked like something out of science fiction movies, or the pyramids from Las Vegas. But unfortunately, we will never see their original appearance. Some archaeologists and scientists believe that the capstone could absorb the sun's energy and distribute it evenly throughout the pyramid. No one knows precisely why the Egyptians needed this technology. There's a theory the pyramids are ancient energy systems. The pharaohs applied this energy to use some unique technologies that were more advanced than all the achievements of the 21st century. And the triangular shape of the pyramids was ideal for boosting this electromagnetic energy. In theory, solar radiation, or electromagnetic forces, accumulated at the top of the pyramid, filled the inner rooms, and then went down the walls to the base. Any surface distortion could prevent the flow from spreading, so they had to create a perfectly smooth surface. That's why they installed the blocks so that nobody could squeeze a needle or razor blade between them. Many people believe in this theory because they built the pyramids from limestone. This material can hold energy inside itself. In the inner part, they created granite deposits to cause air ionization, that is, to create an electric charge. They also dug channels under the pyramid for water to transmit electricity. And at the top, they put a gold capstone, the best conductor of electricity. So, this is how you get a great power generator. Different cultures used similar technologies to create electricity all over the world. But these are all theories. If it had been working, humanity would have used these technologies today. There are mentions of the metal industry, chemistry, engineering, physics, mathematics, and astronomy in some ancient records. Most scientists don't believe in all these things. We know the detailed stages of the technology's development in different cultures. In the 21st century, scientists, historians, and anthropologists can track the evolution of all modern devices. If people had created some technological inventions in ancient times, the history of the world would have looked different. Perhaps all the achievements of antiquity could have been wiped off the face of the earth by global cataclysms, and it can happen to us. Just imagine how people would dig up a laptop in 5,000 years. Perhaps they wouldn't understand what kind of device it is. Another Egyptian wonder surrounded by mystery is the statue of the Sphinx. The Egyptians carved it out of a single massive piece of limestone about 4.5 thousand years ago. But scientists still don't know the exact date of its construction or who built it. People painted the Sphinx in different colors, so it looked much brighter and more vivid in the distant past. It was shining just like the Great Pyramids. Anyway, time hasn't only changed its appearance, but its name too. Initially, the Egyptians called it Hor-Mekhet. The Greeks renamed it the Sphinx about a few hundred years after it had been built. The Sphinx emphasized the greatness of the rulers of Egypt. It also performed a symbolic function of a watchdog guarding the tomb of the pharaoh and the paths leading to it. This version sounds realistic, since archaeologists have discovered many secret entrances at the foot of the Sphinx. Perhaps these rooms and intricate tunnels lead to underground halls with treasures. And treasures don't always mean gold and jewelry. According to legends and theories, the Sphinx guards the Hall of Records, the storage of all humankind's knowledge. The information about the ancient mythical state of Atlantis could be there. You can find many detailed maps of the internal dungeons of the Sphinx on the internet. They show structures 12 stories deep under the statue. It looks like a small city filled with gold, scrolls of knowledge, and various ancient artifacts. But don't believe all these maps. These are just theories. Several thousand years have passed, but people have very little information about it. Archaeologists know that there are still many strange and exciting things about the Sphinx that are still undiscovered. Some locals are afraid to research because they believe they can awaken something terrible from the underground depths. Therefore, it's mostly scientists from other countries who conduct the excavations. In 1998, scientists discovered strange tunnels leading to empty rooms under the Sphinx. They realized that some people tried to get there through tunnels in the past, and maybe those people took all the treasures that were there. One of the legends says that some powerful artifact lays beneath the Sphinx. Its technology can change the whole world, but the locals are hiding it because it can damage the planet. Some believe that you can find evidence of unknown technologies painted on the granite walls in the pharaoh's tombs. But most likely, these paintings and signs tell us the myths and legends of ancient Egypt. But what if Egyptian symbols and drawings are detailed instructions for using ancient technologies? What if the locals that lived at that time thought, people in the future won't be able to get energy themselves. Let's leave some detailed instructions for them. Anyway, there are many riddles and theories. In reality, the search for answers is a dangerous undertaking, since it's not easy to get into the underground halls. Excavations can ruin the structure of the entire Sphinx. Any person inside the tunnels may get lost and never be able to find their way back. Besides, it costs a lot of money. Now, what would be awesome is if people could invent some device that could scan underground areas and show their detailed models.
Egyptologists have been digging around every inch of the Great Pyramid for ages. Yet somehow, they overlooked this stunning pink granite bathtub buried a few miles next to it. And here's the deal. This mysterious oval tube lying next to the Khufu pyramid for years may provide evidence that the Egyptians built the pyramids not only for monumental purposes, but also to generate electricity, experimenting with it long before Alessandro Volta and Thomas Edison. The Giza Plateau is famous for its three pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. But there are also two smaller foundations next to them, the unfinished North Pyramid of Zayat el-Aryan and the Layer Pyramid. Some researchers say these buildings were never finished, while others think they were destroyed for more mysterious reasons. One of these reasons might have to do with the original usage of the Giza Pyramids, the idea that they were used as an electricity generator. To connect these dots, we need to go back to the beginning of the 20th century. That's when an Italian architect and Egyptologist named Alessandro Barsanti decided to examine the Zayat el-Aryan pyramid. Near the site, he noticed something unusual: scattered granite fragments. To a casual passerby, these might have seemed insignificant, but Barsanti recognized the signs. You see, ancient Egyptians often used sites to prepare stones before transporting them to their final destinations. The fact that there was granite on the ground intrigued him. Granite was a more expensive material than the limestone typically used for pyramids, which suggested that it might have been intended for an important and possibly hidden structure. At a depth of 68 feet, they encountered a huge pink granite block. He kept going with the excavations, and they revealed ancient inscriptions carved into the stones. They sent the drawing to experts, but no one could decipher what they meant. Were they instruction sets to something? That's when Barsanti made his biggest discovery. He found an oval-shaped vat carved from pink granite and polished to a mirror-like finish. The thing is, the vat had been carefully sealed. When they opened it, they found a thin black residue along the walls. I'm thinking something in the lines of a black oily substance. This discovery raised many questions for him. It didn't make sense to him that ancient Egyptians would go above and beyond to seal and protect this strange vat. By 1911, Barsanti had to abandon his effort to figure out what was the deal with that mysterious pit. But his findings intrigued researchers all over the world, and they've got their own opinions about it. One of these modern theories suggests that the other pyramids could have been used as a part of a bigger whole. It suggests that the Khufu pyramid was actually used as a water pump designed to irrigate the desert area. Apparently, the pyramid's internal chambers would function as a hydraulic system. In the 1990s, an engineer took this theory seriously and studied the pyramid's subterranean chamber. Surprisingly, he found actual signs of water damage. Apparently, the pyramid generated powerful compression waves, aka pulses, that could create electricity. This raised an important question. Could the ancient Egyptians have used the pyramids as a generator in order to produce electricity? On paper, that was proven to be possible, but hey, agreeing on the original use of the pyramids is probably one of the most difficult things in the world. So, we're still not 100% sure about this. Apart from that, Egypt is a playground for important discoveries regarding humanity's past. I mean, scientists have just discovered what looks like a cosmic command center, similar to that room from the Doctor Strange movies. They discovered an L-shaped astronomical observatory, measuring around 9,000 square feet, dating back to the 6th century BCE. Definitely the first and largest of its kind from that era. The mud brick structure housed tools used for calculating dates related to ancient Egyptian rites, royal coronations, and agricultural plans. This observatory is located in the archaeological site known as the Temple of Phuto, just 50 miles east of Alexandria. It's pretty impressive. The structure was designed so that you'd get inside the room through an east-facing entrance. This way, you'd get to see the sunrise. Once inside, you'd find a pretty huge shadow clock, used to tell time by tracking the movement of shadows inside the room. This variant of a sundial clock was nearly 16 feet long. That was quite an exciting discovery. Another interesting one was that scientists and Egyptologists have discovered the first ever pregnant mummy. Now, even if we know quite a lot about mummification processes, we keep making discoveries that open new doors into the lives of ancient Egyptians. It took so long for someone to find out this mummy was expecting at the time she was embalmed because she was placed in a male's coffin. More specifically, a male priest. Historians say that during the 19th century, a lot of traders mixed coffins up in order to sell them. Yes, that means they opened them and switched mummies to please their buyers. It was a complete surprise because they were hoping to study more about ancient health issues when they opened this coffin up. But they had another special research on their hands: prenatal practices in ancient Egypt. This mummified woman, who lived about 2,000 years ago, was from 20 to 30 years old when she passed away. She was found in Thebes, and her remains were incredibly well preserved. You see, mummification recipes varied across Egypt. In this woman's case, researchers could tell she was a member of the high society since she was buried with special amulets. But since mummification methodologies differed so much between cities and time periods, they still have to dig further to understand why she was embalmed along with her baby. Speaking of mummies, scientists were digging up a final resting place in Saqqara, also in Egypt, and they unearthed two embalming workshops. One was for humans and the other for sacred animals. Apparently, the workshops date back to about 2,400 years ago. They were equipped with stone beds, clay pots, and ritual vessels. Everything you needed to mummify. But that's not all. Archaeologists also stumbled upon cheese stored in jars behind tombs that were over 3,000 years old. Yep, cheese. This shows that the ancient Egyptians were pretty savvy when it came to preserving food, too. They knew how to store stuff for the long haul, not just the mummies. It really shows how they applied their preservation skills to both food and bodies, giving us a glimpse into their impressive technological know-how. Scientists have also found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies, and to their surprise, it was completely covered in gold. You see, Egyptian mummies covered in gold are already a rare thing, but they weren't expecting it to be the oldest one ever found. The mummy was quite well preserved, and they could identify that it was the remains of a wealthy man called Hekashepes. Many symbols show that he was important and wealthy, like the band he wore on his head and the bracelet on his chest. He was also dressed in a tunic wrapped with a belt, which was a way to preserve the good appearance of a person after they passed away. To reveal it, they had to open the final resting place with mortar. Basically, it was like they were opening a time machine, just as the ancient Egyptians did 4,300 years ago. If you think about it, it's almost like entering a time capsule. Enough about mummies. Scientists also found something very exciting hovering above the pyramids. they had to use a fancy top-notch radar known as LARID, aka Low Altitude Long Range Ionospheric Radar, which can see these invisible waves far away into the sky. LARID helped them discover giant plasma bubbles floating in the air above the pyramids. These bubbles are called plasma bubbles, and they wreak havoc on modern technologies. I mean, they can disrupt GPS and phone signals for hundreds of kilometers in diameter from where they're located. These bubbles are massive, sometimes as big as cities, and they're caused by the sudden depletion of charged particles in the ionosphere. So, instead of spreading out evenly throughout the ionosphere, they stick together in this wave-like form. This was a pretty important discovery because it can help scientists understand how to prevent these waves from messing with our technology.
Kim Kardashian is a fashion mogul, law student, and, as it turns out, an accidental artifact whistleblower. Let me spill the tea. In one of pop culture's biggest plot twists, Kim Kardashian inadvertently posed next to a coffin only a few people knew was stolen. Her picture went viral, and somewhere around the globe, one of the looters involved in stealing the coffin saw it. Just like that, she helped to unravel a $4 million antiquity smuggling ring. Let's rewind. One of the looters involved in originally stealing the coffin was startled to see that the artifact had already been sold. His partners told him they were still waiting for a buyer. Since he didn't get his share of the loot, he emailed the Kim Kardashian picture to an attorney in New York responsible for these types of cases. Together with Kim's picture were some other photos of the coffin, still covered in mud, being taken from its original location. He told the attorney that the coffin had been stolen and gave him the proof he needed to go solve this case. Back in ancient Egypt around the 1st century BCE, a man named Njemonk passed away. He was a high-ranking priest who served the ram-headed deity of Heracleopolis. And when someone like that passes away, their send-off was special. Njemonk's coffin was a golden masterpiece. In ancient Egyptian belief, gold wasn't just for show. It was sacred. It symbolized the essence of the deities and was thought to help people be reborn in the afterlife. This particular coffin even spelled out its inscriptions, linking the precious metals directly to divinity, rebirth, and the power of the sun. Fast forward to 2011. Egypt was going through major political upheaval, and amid the chaos, tomb raiders took their chance. In the Al-Minya region near Cairo, looters broke into Njemonk's site. They dug up his gleaming coffin and smuggled it out of the country. First, the coffin landed in the hands of a dealer in the United Arab Emirates who forged export documents, claiming it was a Greco-Roman artifact to disguise its true Egyptian origins. Then it traveled to Germany, where a gallery owner had it restored and, allegedly, faked a license saying it had been legally exported back in 1971. With new papers and a polished look, it was passed to 2 French antiquities dealers who sold it to none other than the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York for $4 million. And just like that, in 2017, Njemonk's radiant coffin was on public display once again, this time in New York. The Met was absurdly happy to have acquired this piece. All over New York, you could see buses advertising the Met's new exhibition, based on this ancient Egyptian relic. The Metropolitan Museum of Art is one of New York's most prestigious museums. It's home to some of the world's biggest curators. And once a year, it hosts the celebrity-filled event known as the Met Gala. In 2018, the yearly theme of the world-famous Met Gala was Heavenly Bodies. And that's when Kim Kardashian walked onto the red carpet wearing a beautiful, sparkling Versace gold dress. She was wandering around the museum when she saw something that matched her dress and posed in a photo next to it. Of course, the queen of the internet went viral, standing right next to Njemonk's coffin. And that's when it all happened. Someone self-described as friends with the original looters sent the photo to Manhattan's Assistant District Attorney, Matthew Bogdanos.
Bogdanos had been obsessively tracking down looted artifacts for the past years. He knew there were some important Egyptian artifacts on the illegal trading market, and when he saw the picture, he knew the coffin had really been stolen. The informant shared digital images of the tomb, confirming it had been looted in 2011. And as investigators dug deeper, they found the missing piece: a human finger bone still inside the coffin. Yep, when the looters threw away the mummy's body into the Nile River, they left something behind: one of its fingers. But later on, this piece of evidence was key to proving the artifact's origin. By 2019, the Met returned the coffin to Egypt, and its CEO issued a formal apology. The museum, now aware it had been duped, vowed to overhaul its acquisitions process and even try to recover the money. Meanwhile, one of the European men involved in the forging of the illegal documents of the coffin was arrested in Germany in 2020. He maintains the paperwork was legit, but hey, the evidence says otherwise. Just FYI, next time someone says Kim Kardashian is famous for nothing, remember, Kim Kardashian accidentally helped to solve one of the art world's biggest modern heists. Moving forward, this next story is also worth a few millions, but to some, it should never be sold. Chris Pepe was just 7 when he first glimpsed the sparkling relics, tiny gems in a glass case at his great-uncle's house. Back then, they were just part of the furniture, but as he grew older, he learned the truth: that these weren't just pretty stones. They were discovered beside what's believed to be the actual remains of the Buddha. It all began in 1898 when Chris's great-grandfather, William Claxton Pepe, a British landowner in colonial India, excavated a mysterious mound near the village of Piprawa. Inside a deep stone chamber, he found bone fragments, gold, and crystal reliquaries. One box had an inscription in ancient Brahmi script stating the remains belonged to the Buddha himself and had been gifted to his clan, the Shikyas, after his cremation. The discovery rocked the world. News spread through international papers, and scholars confirmed its authenticity. The discovery even helped map ancient Buddhist roots and identify Lumbini as the Buddha's birthplace. Though it happened during the colonial era, the story is more complex than simple looting. Pepe gave most of the relics away. He gave the bones to the King of Siam, which is now called Thailand, and the rest to Indian authorities. Only a few duplicates of the stones stayed with the family and were passed down through generations. When Chris inherited them in 2013, he and his cousins didn't hide them. They launched the Piprawa project, digitized family archives, and loaned the relics to museums around the world, from New York's Met to Seoul's National Museum, always free of charge. But in 2025, the whole thing became controversial when the family planned to auction the gems at Sotheby's in Hong Kong. The Indian government intervened, even issuing a legal notice demanding the auction's halt, saying that the relics are sacred and a cultural heritage. They argued that the sale violated Indian and international laws, including United Nations conventions, and called for the relics' repatriation to India for preservation and religious purposes. And talking about sacred items coming back home, after more than half a century in exile, 4 ancient bronze sculptures looted from Thailand were finally given back. These pieces are known as the Prakonche artifacts. They consist of 3 Bodhisattva statues and 1 Buddha image that were unearthed in the 1960s by villagers in Buriram province. If you've ever been to that part of the world, you'll know most people are very devotional and connected to their spiritual beliefs. So unearthing something like that is as close to the sacred you'll probably get in a lifetime. But the items were smuggled out and eventually landed in the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. These statues are estimated to be 1,300 years old. They were tied to a man called Douglas Latchford, a notorious figure in the illicit antiquities trade. Now, after years of pressure, the museum has agreed to their return. Thai officials, along with U.S. Homeland Security, confirmed the artifacts have been deaccessioned and will be soon repatriated. This isn't the museum's first time returning treasures. In 2021, it surrendered ancient lintels after a lawsuit from US authorities. But this latest move hits close to home, literally, for one of the villagers who helped discover the artifacts and never dreamed they'd vanish overseas.
Beneath the sands of Luxor, scientists found something that was perhaps never meant to be found. Over 1,000 decorated stone blocks that belonged to the ruined temple of a woman pharaoh. It got us thinking, why was this temple so brutally destroyed, and who was this woman? Her name is Hatshepsut, and she is now considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, but for a long time, history almost forgot her. She ruled during the 18th dynasty, from around 1479 to 1458 BCE. She's remembered for her ambitious building projects, successful military campaigns, and flourishing trade expeditions. It turns out she was one out of 4 women to take the title of pharaoh in Egyptian history. The next woman would have to wait for 1,500 years to reign, and that woman we know as Cleopatra. The story of how Hatshepsut got to be a pharaoh is the most colorful part of this tale. As far as most dynastic rules go, it's usually men that are first in line for royal thrones. In Egypt, that was the same. That's why, when Pharaoh Thutmose I had a daughter as his firstborn, that was a big no-no as far as his succession line went. A few years later, Pharaoh Thutmose I passes away. The crown passed to Thutmose II, who ruled briefly, only to leave the throne to his infant son, Thutmose III. In this scenario, Hatshepsut was this pharaoh's stepmother. So what happened was that Hatshepsut served as advisor to her stepson, since he was too young to rule on his own. But after 7 years, she made an unprecedented move. She decided to seize power and declared herself Pharaoh of Egypt. Now this was not a simple power grab. Hatshepsut understood that if she wanted to rule, she had to present herself as a legitimate king. In a bold move, she adopted the full royal regalia, including the false beard traditionally worn by male pharaohs. She was often depicted in statues and hieroglyphs as a man, wearing the pharaoh's kilt and headdress. But this wasn't about disguising herself. Experts believe she never tried to hide her identity. Inscriptions on her statues often included feminine titles, like Daughter of Re, or grammatical structures that combined male and female terms, such as His Majesty herself. This showed that while she adopted traditional symbols of kings, she still acknowledged her true gender. But she needed to go even further. To legitimize her rule, she crafted an elaborate origin story. She claimed that the deity Amun himself had visited her mother in the form of her father, Thutmose I, and that she was his divine daughter. Now this was no small claim, since pharaohs were seen as deities on earth. By aligning herself with Amun, she strengthened her right to the throne. In temple carvings, she depicted this divine birth with Amun, presenting her as his rightful heir. These narratives weren't just mythology, they were tools, ensuring her position remained unchallenged. Hatshepsut also took a new name, Ma'at Kari, which translates roughly to "Truth is the soul of the sun god." The word Ma'at was central to Egyptian beliefs. It represented order, justice, and divine balance. Pharaohs were expected to uphold Ma'at to ensure Egypt's stability. By calling herself Ma'at Kari, Hatshepsut was likely reinforcing that she was a legitimate and rightful ruler. Her reign was truly great. She led Egypt into an era of peace and prosperity, launching massive building projects and restoring temples across the kingdom. Her most famous achievement was the construction of her temple at Deir el-Bahari, a pretty impressive architectural masterpiece carved into the cliffs of Luxor. Hatshepsut initiated one of the most ambitious construction projects in ancient Egyptian history, commissioning monuments, temples, and obelisks to immortalize her reign. It's argued that she continued with the construction of the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a grand road lined with statues leading to the Karnak Temple. For many, her shining architectural achievement was the towering obelisk she had carved from single pieces of granite. One of these, weighing over 320 tons, still stands today. Now, beyond building, she expanded Egypt's influence through trade. She sent an expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, believed to be modern-day Somalia or Eritrea, bringing back riches like gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Her fleet of ships sailing the Red Sea marked the first recorded trade mission of its kind, establishing economic ties that would benefit Egypt for generations. Yet, for all of her success, something strange happened after Hatshepsut passed away. Her successor, aka her stepson Thutmose III, who had been overshadowed by her rule, took a drastic step. He ordered her name to be erased from history. Her statues were defaced, her inscriptions chiseled away, and her achievements credited to other rulers. It was as if she had never existed. Some believe Thutmose III wanted to reclaim his rightful place as pharaoh, while others suggest that later rulers, uncomfortable with the idea of a female pharaoh, sought to restore traditional male dominance. The story gets even more tragic. The power struggle between stepmother and stepson continues, since, even after her passing away, Thutmose III built his own temple right next to Hatshepsut's at the Valley of the Kings. But he built his temple with one deliberate modification. His monument was built 11 feet higher than hers. Mind you that this was no accident, it was a symbolic statement. He wanted to overshadow her legacy. But history had other plans. Hatshepsut's legacy started to be rediscovered in the 19th century, and it was only through careful archaeological investigation that her reign was properly recognized. Today, Hatshepsut is remembered as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Her reign, once erased, has been reconstructed through constant archaeological discoveries, proving that her power and influence could not be so easily forgotten. Her resting place had been hidden in plain sight, her body removed from its original chamber in an effort to erase her from history. This final piece of evidence cemented her legacy, proving that even attempts to erase a pharaoh could not really do it. Hatshepsut's grand temple, Djeser-Djeseru, was a stunning architectural feat, designed to immortalize her reign and solidify her divine connection to Amun. But after her death, her successor, Thutmose III, launched that calculated effort to erase her legacy, and parts of her temple were dismantled. Historians still debate why. Was it a dynastic power move, an attempt to restore traditional male rule, or a bid to strengthen Thutmose III's claim to the throne? Maybe he was just a jerk. Whatever the reason, the destruction wasn't immediate. It happened decades after her death, suggesting it might not have been a personal revenge, but a broader political strategy. Yet, despite these efforts, her temple endures, and so does her story, a defiant echo of Egypt's first great female pharaoh. Let's travel through space and time to another place. Dashur, Egypt, is known to be home to several resting places of people from ancient Egypt. In the year 2017, scientists uncovered a long-lost pyramid. They quickly called the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities because they suspected it was going to be a big deal. Unlike most pyramids that were found in the area, this one was completely sealed. Lifting the capstone was a delicate process. When they finally managed to open the pyramid, they expected to find an undisturbed chamber. Instead, it was chaos. The place had been looted, and the personal items of the person that had passed away were scattered all over. But in the middle of the wreckage, they found a chest. Using the latest scanning technology, they managed to read the damaged hieroglyphs on its surface. What they found was unbelievable. The name inscribed there was as clear as day: Princess Hatshepsut. Ooh! The discovery made in 2017 also opened up a lot of questions. After further analysis, scientists discovered the remains belonged to another Hatshepsut. It belonged to a princess that lived during Egypt's 13th dynasty. The fact that a resting place had been looted before it was sealed made scientists wonder, were these ancient people trying to hide something about this public figure? And why is there almost no record about her in ancient Egyptian history? Ooh, stay tuned.
There are mysterious plasma bubbles floating around the pyramids of Giza. As bizarre as that might sound, let's get one thing clear right off the bat. There's nothing extraterrestrial going on here. Plasma bubbles are those weather anomalies that form in a layer of Earth's atmosphere called the ionosphere. This is an invisible layer surrounding our planet that stretches roughly from 50 to 400 miles above Earth's surface, right at the edge of space. In this layer, the sun, being the giant hot power that it is, basically cooks gases, splitting them into electrically charged particles called plasma. Here's where it gets interesting. At night, especially near the equator, these charged particles get disturbed, and when a bunch of them suddenly vanish at the same time, it forms what we call a plasma bubble. Imagine it like a big empty pocket where the plasma is missing or its quantity is lowered. But it's only considered a plasma bubble if this phenomenon occurs on a large scale, typically around 62 miles in size. If you're already packing your suitcase for Egypt and have put binoculars to look at the tips of the pyramids, I'm sorry to say that we can't see these plasma bubbles with the unaided eye. It's all happening way above our heads, completely invisible to us. Scientists need to use special equipment, like the Latitude Long Range Ionosphere Radar, or LARID, to detect these bubbles. This advanced technology helps researchers track and observe the movement and formation of plasma bubbles in real time. This formation, by the way, can be triggered by solar storms. That brings us to November 2023, when an impressive solar storm occurred. On a scale from 1 to 5, this one was classified as a G3, which is considered a strong event. Solar storms occur when sunspots are basically cooler, darker areas on the sun's surface, release bursts of energy into space. These flares triggered several geomagnetic storms on Earth. While this might sound like doomsday stuff, it didn't disrupt our daily lives too much. In fact, it was great news for skywatchers, since the solar storm created stunning auroras, with the northern lights visible as far south as Greece and Turkey. But this particular storm in 2023 also had another interesting consequence. It caused the largest plasma bubble ever recorded by the Chinese radar. This phenomenon was so massive that it covered regions as far apart as the Egyptian pyramids and the Midway Islands in the Pacific Ocean. Now that's a huge distance, and it is a big deal for science. And that's because plasma bubbles are a growing threat to modern technology. Experts say they can disrupt satellite communications and GPS systems. So if you're using Google Maps or Waze and suddenly it can't figure out where you are, a plasma bubble might be to blame. Great. We now know what's going on with those bubbles, detected above the pyramids of Giza. But things get even weirder inside this ancient construction. Apparently, the Great Pyramid of Giza has the ability to concentrate electromagnetic energy within its interior. A couple of years ago, a group of researchers decided to see what would happen if they took this ancient architecture and hit it with radio waves. I mean, waves that are similar to the kind your phone uses, but on a much larger scale, up to 1,900 feet long. But since they couldn't just start blasting radio waves at the actual pyramid, they did the next best thing: computer modeling. Using these simulations, the researchers discovered something incredible. The Great Pyramid can actually concentrate electromagnetic energy within its internal chambers, as well as underneath its base, where an unfinished chamber is located. By concentrate, I mean something like trap it. For example, when you shout into a cave, you hear your voice echo back, right? The sound waves don't just disappear, they bounce around and get focused. Similarly, when radio waves hit the pyramid, they don't just pass through or around it. Instead, they get absorbed, bounce around, and focus inside and underneath the pyramid. Our list of mysterious phenomena surrounding the Egyptian pyramids doesn't end there. Inside the pyramid, there's a long, narrow passage that leads to what's known as the King's Chamber. This room sits at the center of the pyramid, and it's believed to have been the final resting place of Pharaoh Khufu, the ancient Egyptian leader who commissioned the entire thing over 4,000 years ago. When visitors step into the King's Chamber, two things normally strike them: the room's incredible acoustics and its heavy, imposing structure, which is entirely lined with red granite. Recently, scientists have started to connect these two facts. Some researchers now believe that the king's chamber might be able to catch or pick up sound energy generated from other parts of the pyramid. In other words, this room might have been designed to amplify sound in a way that no other chamber in the pyramid can. To test this theory, researchers conducted an experiment where they sang in the Queen's chamber, which is located directly below the King's chamber. Here's where it gets wild. The music couldn't be heard in the lower underground rooms of the pyramid, but it sounded loud and clear in the King's chamber. One possible explanation for this is the type of stone used in the King's chamber: pink granite. Granite is known for its piezoelectric properties, meaning it can absorb energy from its surroundings, like sound vibrations, and convert it into electrical energy. This suggests that the chamber's unique acoustics might be due to more than just the shape of the room. It could be that the granite itself plays a role in amplifying and concentrating sound waves. According to scientists, these discoveries open up a whole new field of research into the pyramid's potential. Could the ancient pyramids have somehow harnessed the energy created by sound waves, or even Earth's natural vibrations? It might sound far-fetched, but considering the granite's piezoelectric properties are well documented in modern science, it's not entirely impossible. Who knows? Maybe we've only just scratched the surface of what the pyramids were truly capable of. Speaking of just scratching the surface, there's even more to think about, like how the pyramids ended up in such a perfect location. It seems the builders lined up the Great Pyramid with the cardinal points, meaning its sides are almost perfectly aligned with the four main directions: north, south, east, and west. There are many theories about how they did it, but one study suggests that Egyptians might have used the fall equinox to achieve this perfect alignment. During the equinox, the sun rises and sets directly in the east and west. It probably made it easier for builders to use the sun's position as a guide. By watching the sun during this time, they could make sure the pyramids were positioned just right. If we think about all these strange things about the pyramids, I mean their perfect alignment, the ability to concentrate radio waves, and the materials used in the chambers that might generate electrical energy, could the real purpose of the pyramids actually be much more complex than just being tombs? Well, Nikola Tesla thought so. It is said that the famous inventor and engineer was kind of obsessed with the Egyptian pyramids, and he wondered if they might actually be giant energy transmitters. He believed the shape and position of the pyramids could help them function as huge generators, capable of producing free, limitless energy. Some researchers agree with Tesla and believe that these massive monuments might have been designed as giant power plants. According to their theory, builders could have figured out how to move ions, those electrically charged particles in the atmosphere, by placing materials like copper, gold, and silver around the pyramids. So, it's definitely possible that the ancient Egyptians created a sustainable, renewable power source. Although this is a very interesting thought, we haven't been able to confirm this theory, and the true purpose of the pyramids remain one of